I set a trap for my fiancée. I left lipstick on my collar, a stranger's earring on the nightstand, and waited for her to walk through our bedroom door at the exact wrong moment. And the sickest part, it worked even better than I planned because when she broke down crying, she didn't just confess to finding my evidence. She confessed to everything I could never prove she'd been doing for months. So here's the short version. After 3.5 years of building my entire world around this woman during COVID, she got an office job, started coming home later, and later gaslit me into thinking I was the crazy one. And I responded, not by leaving like a normal person, but by engineering the most calculated revenge I've ever heard of, only to discover the truth made winning feel like losing. I'm 27 male. My fiancée is Fiona, 26. There's Amy, who I'll get to later. She knew exactly what she was signing up for. And then there's Marcus, Fiona's best friend, the guy whose "you're overthinking it, bro" advice gave her permission to do whatever she wanted while I sat on our couch at 2 a.m. wondering if I was insane. Let me tell you about the sandwich. I know that sounds stupid, but the first crack in everything wasn't a late night or a suspicious text. It was a turkey club she ate at her desk on a Tuesday in March without telling me. See, during COVID, Fiona and I ate every single meal together. Every one. For 3.5 years, our apartment was the entire universe. I worked remote doing freelance web development. She did customer service from the living room. We cooked breakfast at 9, lunch at 1, dinner at 7. We had a system. We had times, rituals, asterisk, and when she got the marketing coordinator position at this firm downtown, her first in-office job since the pandemic, I was genuinely happy for her. I told myself I was happy. Then she texted me at 1, 2, 4, 7 p.m. times, already ate, grab something with the team. Don't wait up for lunch, asterisk. Don't wait up for lunch. Like I was some dog by the door. I'd already made 2 plates. Turkey club's her favorite. The bread toasted exactly how she liked it, dark but not burnt. I stood in our kitchen holding a spatula and staring at my phone, and something shifted in my chest. Not anger, something quieter, like a rope pulled taut that you don't realize is fraying. I ate both sandwiches. Told myself I was being ridiculous. But here's what nobody warns you about. When your partner suddenly has a life outside your shared walls, the silence doesn't hit you all at once. It accumulates. First, it's lunch alone. Then it's dinner alone because there's a team happy hour. Then it's falling asleep on the couch waiting for her key in the lock, and the lock doesn't turn until 11, and she walks in smelling like bar soap from a bathroom that isn't ours, and she kisses your forehead and says, "You didn't have to wait up. I didn't have to." But what else was I going to do? The first month was fine. Adjustment period. The second month, Fiona started mentioning a coworker named Derek. Derek said the funniest thing in the meeting. Derek recommended this podcast. Derek thinks I should try rock climbing. I'd nod and ask follow-up questions like a good partner, and meanwhile, my stomach would tighten into something I couldn't name. I brought it up once casually, I thought. You talk about Derek a lot. Her face changed so fast it was like watching a door slam. He's on my team. I talk about everyone on my team. I know, you times what? You want me to not have friends. You want me to come home and sit in silence with you every night. My throat closed. I said nothing. She softened, touched my arm, said she was sorry, said the transition was hard on both of us. And I believed her because I needed to. Week 6 at the new job. She missed dinner without texting. I called at 8 p.m. voicemail. Called again at 9 voicemail. She walked in at 1015 with Thai food and an apology about a last-minute client crisis. I asked why she didn't text. She said her phone died. I pointed out she posted an Instagram story at 9:30. She stared at me for 3 full seconds, then said, "Are you tracking my social media now?" I wasn't. I'd just been scrolling alone on our couch, and there she was, laughing in some bar booth with people I'd never met, captioned, "Times work fam, asterisk." That was the night I started sleeping badly. Week 9. She came home at midnight. Mascara slightly smudged, one button on her blouse refastened in the wrong hole. I noticed. I said nothing. She showered before coming to bed, which she never used to do. Week 12. 2 a.m. I was sitting on the couch in the dark when her headlights swept across the living room wall. She came inside and startled when she saw me. "Jesus, you scared me. Where were you?" Marcus and I went to that sunrise point off Route 9. You know the overlook. We were talking and lost track of time. "It's 2 a.m., Fiona. The sun doesn't rise for 4 hours. She set her purse down slowly. We were driving times to the sunrise point. We stopped for food. My phone died. Your phone dies a lot lately. What is that supposed to mean? It means your phone dies a lot lately. She crossed her arms, shifted her weight. Then she said something that I've replayed 1,000 times since. Even if I got distracted, even if I had some temporary distraction, I'd always come back to you. You know that, right? My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs so she wouldn't see. What does temporary distraction mean, Fiona? It means you're overthinking it. That's literally what Marcus said you'd do. I called Marcus the next day. He confirmed they'd hung out. Said I was overthinking it, bro. Said Fiona was just enjoying having a social life again. Said I should get a hobby. I came here to this space to get some neutral perspective from strangers. I added every detail so people would get a complete picture of my situation. And the responses confirmed what my gut already knew times. Anytime someone starts mentioning how their coworker says this or their coworker says that, they're already cheating. This is just their subconscious trying to confess. Asterisk. People hide things in plain sight. They dare you to see it. So I stopped asking questions. I stopped waiting on the couch. I stopped being the paranoid fiancé she'd made me into. And I started planning something much worse. That's when I matched with Amy. Amy wasn't a stranger. She was a girl I dated for 3 months in 2019. Casual, physical, no pretense of forever. We'd ended things amicably when she moved to Portland. She'd moved back 8 months ago. I knew this because she'd liked a photo of mine in January, and I'd filed it away the way you file away an emergency exit location. Not because you plan to use it, because knowing it's there makes the room feel less like a trap. I matched with her on a Wednesday. We met for drinks on a Friday. Fiona was at a team retreat that weekend, some cabin 2 hours north that she'd mentioned once and never elaborated on. Amy looked exactly the same. Dark hair, red lipstick, she never blotted a laugh that came from somewhere low in her chest. She didn't ask about Fiona. I didn't offer. We talked about nothing for 2 hours, and when she leaned across the table and said, "You look like you haven't been touched in months," I didn't flinch. She was right. I want to tell you I felt guilty. I want to tell you I hesitated that some moral alarm fired in my chest, and I pulled back. But the truth is uglier. I felt times nothing, asterisk. Not excitement, not shame. Just the flat mechanical satisfaction of a chess piece moving to a square it was always going to occupy. We slept together that night at her place. And the next morning I drove home, showered, and sat on the couch where I'd spent 100 nights waiting for Fiona's headlights, and I thought, times. So this is what it feels like on the other side. Asterisk. It felt like nothing. Which told me everything. I kept seeing Amy. Tuesdays and Fridays when Fiona worked late. Amy understood the arrangement. With surgical clarity, she'd been through her own divorce, wanted no complications, no future, no morning after texts. She was an exit, not an entrance. We both knew it. But I wasn't just having an affair. I was building a crime scene. The lipstick started small. A faint smear on my collar that I didn't wash. A hair tie on the bathroom counter that wasn't Fiona's color. A receipt from a restaurant 30 minutes away, left in my jacket pocket, where she'd find it if she looked. Breadcrumbs. The same kind Fiona had been dropping for months, times temporary distractions, asterisk, asterisk, even if I got distracted, times only mine, were physical, tangible, designed to be decoded. She didn't notice. Or she noticed and didn't care. I couldn't decide which was worse. So I escalated. 3 weeks in, I told Fiona I'd be home late on a Saturday, a freelance project, a deadline. She barely looked up from her phone. Sure, babe. I brought Amy to our apartment. I chose the bedroom deliberately. I left the front door unlocked, and then I waited. Fiona's key turned at 6:47 p.m., earlier than expected. I heard her purse hit the entryway table, heard her call my name once, casual, distracted, and then her footsteps in the hallway, and then the bedroom door was open, and she was standing there, and Amy was sitting on the edge of our bed, pulling on her shirt, and I was standing by the dresser with my arms crossed like I'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Because I had, Fiona's face didn't crumble. It times froze, asterisk. Every muscle locked. Her eyes moved from Amy to me, to the sheets, to Amy again, and her mouth opened, but nothing came out, and for 5 full seconds, the only sound was Amy zipping her jeans. Amy left without a word. She touched my shoulder on the way out, brief, deliberate, and then it was just us. Just the 2 people who'd built a universe in this apartment and burned it down from opposite ends. How long? Fiona whispered. 3 weeks. How long for you? Her chin trembled. She pressed her hand over her mouth. And then, like a dam giving way, not from force but from exhaustion, she sat down on the hallway floor and said, "It was just twice, Derek. I just wanted to know what it felt like. To hook up with someone without at times, meaning times anything." My chest should have exploded. I'd spent months chasing this confession, engineering this exact moment of exposure. But hearing it felt like swallowing concrete. Not because I was surprised, because I'd already known, and knowing hadn't protected me from a single thing. "You made me think I was crazy," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. "You told Marcus I was overthinking it. You told me times I was. You times were times suffocating me. So you slept with him and let me think I was insane. You slept with times," her asterisk, "because I stopped. Because the sentence I was about to say times because you made me times was the same sentence every person who's ever done something unforgivable uses to avoid owning it. I sat down across from her in the hallway. 2 people on the floor of a life that no longer fit. We're even, she said quietly. We can start over. I called the wedding planner Monday morning. Canceled everything. The venue, the caterer, the string quartet Fiona's mother had insisted on. The planner asked if I wanted to reschedule. I said no. She asked if I was sure. I said the person getting married doesn't exist anymore. Fiona begged for a week. Then she got angry for a week. Then she went silent, which was worse. I keep seeing Amy. Not because it's love, it's not anything close, but because her apartment doesn't smell like Fiona's shampoo, and her couch doesn't have the indent where I sat for 1,000 nights waiting for headlights. I have no illusions about what Amy and I are. We're 2 people using each other's company to avoid the sound of our own breathing. I booked a month in Alaska. A cabin near Seward, no Wi-Fi, no cell service. I leave in 3 weeks. Before that, I need to vacate the apartment because every room has become a museum of someone who no longer exists. The version of me who toasted bread to the exact shade of dark but not burnt, and believed that if you loved someone completely enough, they couldn't leave without you. Noticing. People in the comments told me I had every right to be angry and suspicious. They were right. But being right didn't save anything. It just gave me a more detailed map of the wreckage. I still don't know if what drove me those last 3 weeks, the planning, the lipstick, the unlocked door, was love or hatred. I've turned it over so many times, the edges have worn smooth, and I still can't tell. Some nights I think they were always the same thing, just wearing different faces. Love is the rope. Hatred is what it becomes after it frays. I need to own my happiness. That's what I wrote in my first post, and I meant it. I just didn't realize that owning it would mean standing in the ashes of everything I'd built and admitting that I lit half the matches myself. The apartment is quiet now. Fiona moved her things out yesterday. I sat on the kitchen floor afterward in the same spot where I'd stood holding a spatula and staring at a text about a sandwich, and I thought times, this is where it started. Not with a betrayal, with a lunch I ate alone. Asterisk. The silence doesn't hit you all at once. It accumulates. I know that now better than anyone. I got uninvited from my brother's wedding for being bisexual, and somehow I'm the one who ruined it from my couch in my pajamas cuddling my boyfriend. Here's what happened. My brother Marcus asked me not to come to his own wedding because his fiancée Diane's ultra-religious family might cause a scene if I brought my boyfriend. I accepted it. Didn't fight, didn't cry, just stayed home. Then my parents texted asking where I was. I told them the truth, and that single honest reply detonated a family war that ended in harassment legal charges and a brother I no longer recognize. So let me set the stage. I'm a guy in my mid-20s, bisexual, and honestly way too used to being treated like a problem. My boyfriend is Ethan. My brother is Marcus, married to Diane, whose father Gerald is the kind of man who thinks God handed him a personal vendetta. My mom is Linda. My dad is Robert. And then there's Natalie, Diane's closeted half-sister who nobody saw coming. Marcus and I used to share a bed when thunderstorms knocked the power out. He'd throw his arm over me and say, "Nothing gets past me, little man." He was 4 years older and built like he believed it. I grew up thinking my brother was a wall between me and anything that could hurt me. That wall came down on a Tuesday in March, 8 weeks before the wedding. We were at a diner, his idea neutral ground, which should have been my first clue. He ordered coffee and didn't touch it. Kept turning the mug in circles on the table handle at 12 o'clock, then 3, then 6. So here's the thing, he said. Diane's parents are. You know how they are. Conservative. Yeah. He cleared his throat. And Diane and I talked about it, and we think it might just be easier if you came solo. Without Ethan. I remember the specific feeling, not a stab, not a punch, but a slow leak. Like someone had opened a valve somewhere in my chest and something warm was draining out. Or, Marcus continued, and the mug handle hit 9 o'clock. If that's uncomfortable for you, maybe you could just sit this one out. Sit this one out. Like it was a pickup basketball game. I said, okay. That's the part people can't understand. They read this and think I should have flipped the table, made a speech, drawn a line. But here's the thing about being bisexual for 25 years. In a world that keeps handing you little cuts, you develop this numbness. A callous over the place where outrage should live. Ethan and I had been together 3 years by then, and the things that had happened in those 3 years, the comments from coworkers, the jokes from extended family, the way certain friends just evaporated it all, built this reflex. Someone pushes you out, you step back. You make it easy for them. You tell yourself it's not worth the fight because the fight never changes anything. So I told Marcus it was fine. I told him I understood. His shoulders dropped about 3 inches with relief, and that small physical collapse told me everything about how much he'd been dreading this conversation. Not because he was ashamed of asking, but because he was afraid I'd make it difficult. He hugged me in the parking lot, held on a beat too long. I think some part of him knew he was doing something that couldn't be undone. The wedding was June 14th. Ethan and I spent that Saturday on the couch watching a terrible horror movie, the kind where you can see the boom mic in every other shot. He had his head on my chest. I was running my fingers through his hair. It was genuinely one of the most peaceful afternoons I'd had in months. Then, my phone buzzed. Asterisk, asterisk, Linda, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Honey, where are you? We're at the church, and I don't see you anywhere. Asterisk. My stomach dropped. Not because of the question, but because of what the question meant. Marcus hadn't told them. He'd cut me from the guest list and never bothered to explain my absence to our own parents. I stared at the screen for maybe 30 seconds. Ethan paused the movie. You okay? I typed back the truth. Not out of spite, not to cause damage. Just because I was tired, bone tired of carrying other people's secrets for them. Asterisk, asterisk, me, asterisk, 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 Marcus asked me not to come. Diane's family has a problem with me bringing Ethan. It's fine, Mom. Enjoy the wedding. Asterisk. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing for 45 minutes. I found out later what happened in those 45 minutes. My mother Linda stood up from her pew during the cocktail hour, walked directly to Marcus, and said in full earshot of the head table, You told your brother he wasn't welcome at your wedding because of who he loves. Marcus tried to pull her aside. She wouldn't move. Robert stood up next. My quiet newspaper reading, never raises his voice father stood up and said, Answer, your mother's son. 2 factions formed in under a minute. Linda and Robert on one side, Gerald, Diane's father, on the other, already red-faced, already loud, already saying something about lifestyle choices and the sanctity of this ceremony. Diane was crying. Marcus was trying to hold the middle arms out like a traffic cop, and the whole thing nearly went physical when Gerald shoved Robert's shoulder. My parents left. Half of Marcus's groomsmen followed. I know all this because Marcus showed up at my apartment at 11 p.m. that night, still in his tuxedo, tie-yanked loose veins visible in his neck. You times told times them, he didn't knock, he pounded. They asked where I was. I answered, You could have said you were sick. You could have said times anything, asterisk. You could have told them the truth yourself, Marcus. He stared at me like I'd spoken a different language. Then he left for his honeymoon. That's when things escalated so much it's unbelievable. Within 48 hours, my Instagram was flooded. Ethan's too. Gerald's side of the family found every account we had. The messages were scripture wrapped around slurs, the kind of hate that dresses itself in holiness, asterisk, abomination. Repent. You destroyed a family. Asterisk. Dozens of them. Some from accounts with profile pictures of smiling grandmothers. I screenshotted everything and sent them to Marcus. His reply times, Stop disturbing my honeymoon with this drama. You started it. Asterisk. I sent more screenshots. He left me on read. Then Diane's father Gerald texted Marcus asking for my home address. And Marcus, my brother, the wall between me and anything that could hurt me, gave it to him. I found out about the address from Ethan. He was standing at the living room window with his phone in one hand, the other hand pressed flat against the glass like he was bracing for impact. Someone just posted our street name in the comments of your brother's wedding photo, he said. His voice was steady, but his hand on the glass was white at the knuckles. I called Marcus. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Third time he picked up. Did you give Gerald our address? A pause. The sound of waves. He was on a beach somewhere. He said he wanted to send you a letter. To apologize. Marcus. Look at what his family's been sending us. Look at the screenshots I sent you. Does that sound like a man who wants to apologize? I think you're being paranoid. He posted our street name online. Another pause. Longer. Then I can't deal with this right now. I'm on my honeymoon. He hung up. I stood there holding a dead phone and felt something shift, not break, not crack, but times, shift times the way tectonic plates move. Quiet. Irreversible. The brother who used to throw his arm over me during thunderstorms had just handed my location to a man who called me an abomination. And his defense was that he was on vacation. Ethan and I packed bags that night and stayed with my parents. Linda was already in motion. She'd been in motion since the reception, apparently calling attorneys, documenting everything, building a file with the precision of someone who'd found a purpose that burned. I walked into my parents' kitchen at 7 a.m. and she had printouts spread across the table. Every message, every comment, every threat. Organized by date sender and severity. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She didn't look up. I should have done this years ago. I should have seen what was happening to you and I didn't, and that stops now. Robert was quieter about it. He always was. But that weekend I went into my old bedroom and found a bisexual pride flag, pink, purple, blue thumbtacked above the headboard. No note, no announcement. Just the flag hung slightly crooked because Robert has never been able to hang anything straight in his life. I stood in the doorway, staring at it, and something behind my sternum cracked open in a way that had nothing to do with pain. The legal process took 3 months. Linda filed harassment charges against Gerald and 4 members of Diane's extended family. The evidence was overwhelming, hundreds of messages, the doxing, a voicemail Gerald left on Ethan's phone at 2 a.m. calling us things I won't repeat here. But the moment that broke the case open was Natalie. Natalie was Diane's half-sister. 23. Quiet at family gatherings. The kind of person who always seemed to be standing slightly behind someone else. She reached out to me through a burner Instagram account, no profile picture, no followers created that same day. Asterisk, I have screenshots of my father coordinating the messages. Group chat, I can testify. Asterisk, I told her she didn't have to. I told her the risk. Asterisk, I know the risk. I'm like you. I've been hiding for 6 years. I'm tired of hiding. Asterisk, she testified. In doing so, she outed herself to every member of her family simultaneously. I watched her sit in that room with her hands folded on the table, voice clear, reading messages. Her own father had written messages about people like her, about people like Times, us Times, and her hands never shook. Not once. The case was won. Financial penalties against Gerald and 3 others. Restraining orders. The kind of legal consequences that don't undo damage but draw a line around it. Then came the sit-down. Linda arranged it, insisted on it. Marcus came to my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon in October. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Linda had built her case file, and he looked smaller. Not physically, just reduced. Like someone had turned down his contrast. I'm sorry, he said, for the address, for not listening, for the wedding. The words were correct, every single one. And every single one landed like a coin dropped on carpet technically. They're technically making contact, producing no sound at all. I looked at him, at this stranger wearing my brother's face. I miss who you used to be, I said. His jaw tightened. He stared at the table. Then he stood up, put his hands in his pockets, and walked out the front door. No goodbye, no rebuttal. Just the click of the latch. Linda disinherited him the following week. That was 7 months ago. Marcus and I haven't spoken since. Ethan and I moved to a new apartment address, unknown to Marcus, unknown to Diane, unknown to Gerald. We adopted a cat named Thunderstorm, which Ethan thinks is funny, and I think is exactly right. My parents are different people now. Linda volunteers with a local LGBTQ organization. Robert still can't hang a flag straight, but he tries. They see me now, not the version of me that made things easy for everyone, but the actual me, the one who exists fully and loves who he loves. Natalie disappeared from contact after the case. Her burner account went dark. I don't know where she is. I think about her constantly, this woman who burned down her own shelter to light my way. I hope she's somewhere safe. I hope she's somewhere time seen, asterisk. The cruel math of all this settles on me sometimes, usually late at night, a wedding meant to join 2 families, permanently severed one. And the person blamed for it all was on a couch fingers in his boyfriend's hair watching a movie so bad you could see the boom mic. I never even made it to the church. My mother-in-law told me I disgraced her family's genetics by existing. at her husband's birthday party, in front of 40 relatives, while standing in a house I paid for. So here's the situation. My in-laws worship beauty like a religion, and I was their heresy. They lived rent-free in a home I bought, mocked me daily for my appearance, and when I finally asked for basic respect, they chose homelessness over apologizing. Then their golden child daughter dumped them in a care facility, and suddenly the ugly daughter-in-law was the only phone number worth dialing. I'm 31, female, and apparently not pretty enough to deserve gratitude. My husband is Lior, 31, the only one in his family who sees people instead of faces. His mother is Vivian, 61, a woman who weaponized beauty her entire life. His father, Gerald, 65, enabled every cruel word. And his sister, Nadine, 34, played the devoted daughter right up until devotion got inconvenient. The thing about marrying into the Ashford family is that nobody warns you. The audition never ends. I met Lior at a hospital fundraiser. I was there because I had organized it. He was there because his company had donated imaging equipment. He asked me to dinner that night, and I said yes, because he looked at me like I was already enough. I didn't know then that his family operated on an entirely different metric. Vivienne had been a catalog model in the 80s, not famous regional. Department store circulars, the occasional magazine spread for a mid-tier jewelry brand. But she'd built an identity around it that calcified into doctrine. Beauty was virtue. Beauty was proof of worth. She passed this gospel to Nadine, who inherited her mother's cheekbones and wielded them like credentials, and to Lior, who quietly rejected it and never told anyone why. The first time I met Vivienne, she held my face between her manicured fingers and turned it side to side like she was inspecting fruit at a market. Interesting bone structure, she said, which I later learned was the most generous thing she'd ever say about me. We married small. Vivienne wore black. The house situation started 2 years before Gerald's birthday party. Lior and I had been married for a year when his parents' financial situation collapsed. Gerald's investment portfolio imploded bad bets on speculative real estate, compounded by pride that prevented him from pulling out early. They were about to lose their home. Vivienne called Lior sobbing, and Lior called me. Here's what people don't understand. I didn't help because I was naive. I helped because my own parents taught me that family means showing up even when it costs you. My father had worked 32 years in municipal water management, so my mother could stay home with my disabled brother. Sacrifice wasn't abstract to me. It was Tuesday. I had savings, substantial savings earmarked for my parents' retirement care. I redirected 85% of it toward the EMI on a house in Vivienne and Gerald's neighborhood, a house Lior had been about to sell because he couldn't carry the payments alone. I covered it. We transferred ownership to my name because that was the legal reality of who was paying. And then we moved his parents in, rent-free, no questions asked. For 3 years, I said nothing. Not when Vivienne rearranged the furniture I'd chosen and told guests it was her home. Not when Gerald referred to me as Lior's wife instead of my name at family dinners, as if naming me would make my presence too real. Not when Nadine visited every other Sunday and the three of them would sit in the living room speaking French, a language I don't speak, while I prepared food in the kitchen. I said nothing because I believed grace was cumulative, that eventually the sheer weight of my kindness would crack something open in them. I was wrong. Gerald's 65th birthday. 42 relatives packed into the house. My house and Vivienne had spent 3 weeks planning it like a state dinner. I'd funded the catering. I'd taken 2 days off work to help set up. I was carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres through the living room when I heard my name. Not my name. What Vivienne called me when she thought I couldn't hear. That weird-looking girl has disgraced this family's genetics just by existing. Look at her. Look at my son. People ask me if she's his Times assistant, asterisk. Laughter. Not all 42 relatives. But enough. I stopped walking. The tray trembled in my hands. Vivienne saw me and didn't flinch. She Times straightened, asterisk. Oh, good, you heard. Maybe now you'll understand why I keep asking Lior to reconsider. The room went silent. I set the tray down on the nearest table with a steadiness that surprised even me, and I walked out. Not dramatically. Not crying. I just left. I sat in my car for 40 minutes and stared at the steering wheel until my hands stopped shaking. That night, I told Lior I wanted the house back. He didn't hesitate. Not for 1 second. He called a family meeting the following weekend and laid it out, apologize to my wife, or vacate her property. Gerald intervened first. You don't have to be her puppet for that. You married her, and now she is doing her duty. Don't put her on a pedestal. Lior snapped. His voice cracked with something I'd never heard from him. Not anger exactly, but the sound of a man realizing his father had never once seen him clearly. I times respect times her for everything, and you should also respect her because she has let you live in her house for the last 3 years and never said a word. The silence that followed was surgical. They were shocked to know the house was mine. Lior told them the truth, that he'd been about to sell when I saved it, paid for 85% of the EMI, and that he'd transferred ownership to my name because it was the right thing to do. They didn't apologize. They didn't even blink toward remorse. Lior asked them directly. Apologize to her. Vivienne's lip curled. A-time simp asterisk. My own son, a simp. It was her duty to help her husband at bad times. That's what wives do. That's not charity. That's obligation. Gerald nodded. Nadine on speakerphone said nothing, which was its own kind of vote. Then leave, Lior said quietly. And they did. Vivienne packed 3 suitcases, Gerald loaded them into Nadine's car, and they drove away from a house they didn't own, toward a daughter whose devotion had an expiration date they couldn't yet read. 2 weeks of silence followed. Then, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, I woke to the sound of shattering glass. The front window of the living room. A brick wrapped in a page torn from one of Vivienne's old modeling composites, her face at 23 jaw, tilted eyes full of a confidence that had curdled into cruelty over 40 years. No note. None was needed. Lior found me standing in the hallway in bare feet glass, glittering across the hardwood like scattered teeth. He pulled me back before I stepped forward. Don't move, he said, and his voice was the voice of a man who had just understood something final. The police came. Filed a report. Insufficient evidence, they said, though. The composite page told its own story. 2 nights later, my father, who had been staying with us while we prepared his room, found Gerald standing on the sidewalk at dusk, staring at the house. Not approaching. Just standing. My father, 71 years old with a replaced hip and a heart condition, went outside to ask if he needed something. Gerald told him his daughter had married above her station, and that the house would come back to the Ashfords one way or another. My father came inside and sat down at the kitchen table and didn't speak for an hour. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were wet, and he said, I didn't raise you to be treated like this. That sentence broke something in me that Vivienne's public humiliation hadn't, because my father had never once complained. Not when he worked double shifts. Not when my brother's care costs consumed every vacation they might have taken. He had absorbed difficulty, like soil absorbs rain, quietly, completely. And now, this man who had earned every ounce of peace I was trying to give him was being terrorized on a sidewalk by someone whose mortgage I had paid. I filed for the restraining order the next morning. The renovation took 3 months. I gutted the bathroom on the ground floor and rebuilt it with grab bars, a walk-in shower, a seat. I widened the door frames. I installed a ramp at the side entrance. Every modification was a sentence in a language Vivienne would never understand. Times, this is what love looks like when it isn't performed for an audience. Asterisk. My father moved in on a Saturday. He stood in the doorway of his room and touched the wall like he was confirming it was real. This is mine, he asked. This is yours. He unpacked a single framed photo of my mother, gone 4 years now, and set it on the nightstand, and that was enough. That was the whole ceremony. Lior severed contact with his parents formally, not through a dramatic phone call, through a letter handwritten 3 paragraphs long. I didn't read it. He didn't offer, but when he sealed the envelope, his hands were steady and his jaw was set in a way that told me the decision had been made long before the pen touched paper. The boy who had quietly rejected his mother's gospel of beauty had finally said so out loud. A year passed. I learned what happened next, not from Lior, not from Vivienne, or Gerald, but from a cousin of Lior's named Mark, who called one evening with the careful tone people use when delivering news they find both terrible and inevitable. Nadine had moved her parents into Cedar Brook Assisted Living. Not gradually, not after a medical event. She'd simply informed them one morning that the arrangement wasn't working. Her boyfriend didn't like the tension, her apartment was too small, their presence was affecting her energy. She drove them to the facility, signed the intake paperwork, and left before lunch. Mark said Gerald had stood in the lobby holding his suitcase looking at the door Nadine had walked through and hadn't moved for 15 minutes. I set the phone down after the call and sat with the information. I expected to feel vindicated. I searched for it, that hot, righteous bloom of times I told you so, asterisk. It wasn't there. What I felt instead was a dull, familiar ache. The same ache I'd felt carrying that tray through the living room. The same ache I'd felt sitting in my car for 40 minutes. Not anger. Grief for people who couldn't stop destroying the bridges they stood on. Lior took it harder. He didn't cry. He went for a run at 10 o'clock at night and came back an hour later and stood in the shower until the water went cold. I didn't ask. I just left a towel on the hook in the hallway light on. Mark told me one more thing. Vivienne in the facility had been heard telling another resident that her son had been stolen by an ugly woman who tricked him and brought him to the streets, that the house had been taken from them, that they were victims of ingratitude. She was still performing, still curating the narrative. Even in a room she didn't choose surrounded by bodies that time, was softening and folding and diminishing the very process she'd spent a lifetime treating as moral failure she could not stop. Gerald, Mark said, mostly sat by the window. I asked Mark if they'd ever mentioned apologizing. He went quiet long enough that I knew the answer. No, he said, not once. I thanked him and hung up. That night I checked on my father. He was asleep in his accessible room in the house I'd paid for under a roof that nobody would take from him. My mother's photo watched from the nightstand. The grab bars gleamed faintly in the hallway light. I closed his door gently and stood there for a moment, my hand still on the knob. The Ashfords had worshipped beauty like it was a savings account, something that would compound and protect them. But beauty doesn't compound. It spends. And when it's gone, what's left is only what you built with your hands and your choices and your willingness to love people who couldn't love you back. I had built this. They had built Cedarbrook. And the ugliest thing in the whole story was that they would never ever see it. My wife looked me dead in the eye and told me that going through her phone was a worse betrayal than the 6 months of explicit messages I found between her and her former student. Let that satisfying delusion sink in for a second. So here's what happened. I caught my wife having an affair with a guy she'd been grooming since he sat in her classroom. I sent every filthy message to his rich wife, and within 72 hours, her billionaire father was dismantling this kid's entire life, while my wife was still out there telling people, I'd be crawling back any day now. She miscalculated badly. I'm 37 male. My wife is Kate, 35, a teacher who apparently never stopped mentoring her favorite student. The affair partner is Rumi, 28, married to Priya, whose father, Victor, is the kind of wealthy man who doesn't yell, he litigates. My buddy Derek is the one who lit the fuse when he called me stammering about what he'd just seen at a downtown restaurant. And me, I'm the husband who never wanted to play dirty but ended up outplaying every single one of them. Let me back up and give you the full picture, because none of this makes sense without understanding what Kate and I were before Derek's phone call blew it apart. We'd been married 4 years, together 6. Kate taught English at a well-regarded private high school, and she was genuinely good at it, the kind of teacher students remembered a decade later. I worked in commercial real estate, boring but stable, and between the two of us, we'd built something comfortable. A 3-bedroom house with a yard that was too big for 2 people, but perfect for the kids we kept saying we'd have next year. Date nights on Thursdays. A shared Netflix queue. The whole quiet architecture of a life that looks unremarkable from the outside, but feels like home when you're inside it. I loved her. That's not complicated. That's just the truth I have to say out loud before the rest of this story makes me sound like I never did. Now. Derek? He called me on a Tuesday evening. I was grilling chicken thighs on the back patio, and when I picked up there was this long pause, the kind of silence that has weight to it. Derek is not a man who hesitates. He once told our college roommate to his face that his girlfriend was stealing from him. But that night he sounded like someone trying to defuse a bomb with his voice. Hey man, so... I was at Luca's downtown for Sarah's birthday thing. Okay, Kate was there. My hand stopped turning the tongs. Not because that was alarming, Kate went out with friends all the time, but because of what his voice was doing. The way it kept dipping, like each word cost him something. She wasn't alone, brother. He described it in fragments. Kate in a corner booth. A younger guy. His hand on her thigh, not casually, possessively. Her leaning into him, laughing with her whole body the way she used to laugh with me in our first year. Derek said they kissed. Not a peck. Not ambiguous. The kind of kiss that makes strangers look away. I wanted to come over to your place right then, Derek said. But I didn't know if I was making it bigger than... You're not making it bigger. I knew. Somewhere beneath the denial, already assembling itself in my brain, I knew. Because when Kate came home that night, she told me she'd been at a coworker's wine tasting. She described the wines. She described the cheese board. She described a funny story about someone's husband. The level of detail was immaculate, the kind of specificity that only liars provide because truth tellers don't need to convince you. She never mentioned a restaurant. She never mentioned a man. That silence was louder than anything, Derek told me. I waited 3 days. I smiled at breakfast. I kissed her goodbye for work. I sat through a Thursday date night at our usual Italian place and watched her face for cracks while she talked about a student's college essay. Nothing. She was flawless. And that's what terrified me, how natural deception looked on her. Friday night, Kate fell asleep on the couch during a movie, her phone on the coffee table face down. I stared at it for 11 minutes. I know because the movie's runtime was ticking in the corner of the screen. 11 minutes of arguing with myself about privacy, about trust, about whether I was becoming the paranoid husband who ruins a good thing over a friend's misunderstanding. Then I picked it up. Her passcode was our anniversary. That detail still burns. I found the contact listed as Rumi16. Not Rumi, not a normal name entry. Rumi16, like a username, like a code designed to look meaningless if you scrolled past it. I didn't scroll past it. 6 months of messages. The first few were almost sweet inside jokes, references to books, the kind of intellectual flirtation Kate would have called mentorship if cornered. But they escalated fast. By month 2, the messages were explicit in a way that made my stomach physically contract. Descriptions of what they'd done. Plans for what they'd do next. Photos I will never unsee. And then I found the detail that turned heartbreak into something colder. Rumi had been her student. Not a college peer, not a colleague, a 17-year-old boy in her classroom. The 16 inches his contact name wasn't random. It was the year 2016, when he was in her class. The messages referenced their history, joked about how far they'd come since the back row. Kate's previous relationship, the one before me, the one she said ended because her ex was emotionally unavailable, had ended because of Rumi. She'd been circling this man for a decade. I exported everything. Every message, every photo, every timestamp. I emailed the files to myself, deleted the sent record, and put her phone back on the coffee table. Then I sat in our dark kitchen for 2 hours, feeling something harden behind my ribs, like wet concrete setting. Saturday morning, I confronted her. I expected tears. Begging. The standard playbook. Instead, Kate's face cycled through surprise, then irritation, then something I can only describe as righteous fury directed entirely at me. You went through my phone. You've been sleeping with your former student for 6 months. You violated my privacy, and you want to talk about Kate. 6 months. She stood up from the kitchen table, grabbed her keys, and said the sentence that sealed her fate: "You'll be calling me by Monday, begging me to come home. I guarantee it." The door slammed. Her car started. And I sat there, jaw tight, already composing an email to Priya. I wanted to meet her and reveal everything, but I didn't make the move because it would have looked creepy. Some strange man showing up at a woman's door claiming her husband was a cheat. So I asked around, found Priya's email through Rumi's barely private social media, and sent it to her. Everything. The full export. She responded within an hour times. "How did you discover the truth?" Asterisk. I told her everything in detail. I told her to read the messages carefully, and she would get all the clarity she needed. After a couple of hours, she responded asking if I had confronted Kate. I said yes. She said that she would involve her father to deal with Rumi and went offline. That was Wednesday. By Saturday, Priya was still gone. No responses. No read receipts. Nothing. I'm trying to reach out to her through all their social media accounts, mutual contacts, anything with a digital pulse. Because Rumi is using her for her father's money. I saw that clearly in the messages, the way he talked about the lifestyle and Victor's connections, and I'm terrified of what a cornered man does when his meal ticket starts. Asking questions. Meanwhile, Kate hasn't signed a single document. She's told her mother Gloria that I'm having a breakdown. She's told colleagues at the school that times I, times cheated on, times are asterisk. And 3 days ago, she sent me a text that read, "Times I want the house. My lawyer says I'll get it. Asterisk." She still thinks she's winning. What she doesn't know is that Victor Sandoval has already made his first phone call. Priya resurfaced on a Monday. Not with a message, with a phone call. Her voice was flat and controlled the way people sound when they've cried so much their body has simply stopped producing the chemicals for it. "I'm safe," she said. "My father's been handling things. I'm sorry I disappeared. I needed to be somewhere. Rumi couldn't reach me." The relief hit me so hard my knees softened. I'd been imagining headlines. I'd been imagining police reports. What's happening with him? "My father doesn't do things emotionally," Priya said. "He does them permanently." She explained it in pieces, the way you describe a car accident out of order, with strange details made vivid by shock. Victor Sandoval had spent the silent week not confronting Rumi, not yelling, not even acknowledging anything was wrong. Instead, he'd had his forensic accountant pull every financial record from the consulting firm where Rumi worked, the firm Victor's investment group had a controlling interest in. The firm Rumi had been hired into, I now understood, not because of talent, but because of marriage. What the accountant found wasn't planted. It didn't need to be. Rumi had been skimming. Small amounts routed through vendor invoices that didn't correspond to real vendors, padded expense reports for client dinners that never happened, the kind of petty graft that a man with a rich father-in-law commits because he believes the money is functionally his anyway. Victor had compiled it into a criminal referral. Embezzlement. Fraud. Wire fraud because some of the invoices cross state lines. Federal wire fraud. My father told Rumi's attorney that he has two options, Priya said. full restitution, resignation, and an uncontested divorce, giving me everything, or prosecution. Jesus. Rumi called it blackmail. My father's lawyer called it a courtesy notification of intended legal action. There's a difference, apparently, when you can afford the right vocabulary. I sat with that for a moment. Victor Sandoval hadn't fought with emotion. He'd fought with accountants and attorneys exactly as Priya had predicted. Rumi's charm, his easy smile, his talent for making women feel like the only person in the room, none of it mattered against a spreadsheet. Then Priya said something that made the hair on my arms stand up. Rumi called me yesterday. He doesn't know I told my father about Kate. He thinks this is about the money. He actually asked me. Her voice cracked for the first time. He asked me to talk to my father, to smooth things over. He said he loved me. The dramatic irony was so thick I could taste it. Rumi scrambling to save his marriage to the woman whose father was destroying him times of the affair he didn't know she'd discovered. He thought Kate was irrelevant. He thought this was a financial audit gone wrong. He also asked if I knew you, Priya added quietly. What? He asked if some man named He Used Your Full Name had contacted me. He said Kate warned him you might try something crazy. He wanted to know if you'd reached out. I almost laughed. Almost. What did you tell him? Nothing. I hung up. Kate's campaign, meanwhile, had been escalating. She'd moved in with Gloria, who initially treated me like I'd had a psychotic episode. Kate had told her mother I'd become controlling and paranoid, that I'd fabricated evidence that I was trying to isolate her. Gloria called me once, her voice trembling with protective fury, and said she is my daughter and I know her. I said, Gloria, I'm going to send you something. You don't have to read it, but if you love her, you should. I sent Gloria a curated selection, nothing explicit, nothing designed to humiliate, just enough to show the timeline, the pet names, the references to hotel rooms on nights Kate had told me she was grading papers. Gloria never called me again. But 2 days later, Kate texted me times, you turned my own mother against me. You're sick. Asterisk. At the school, Kate had been more strategic. She'd told select colleagues that I had cheated, that I was vindictive, that the divorce was my fault. She was building a narrative fortress brick by brick, and I was watching it rise from across the street, knowing exactly how to bring it down. My lawyer said, don't. My lawyer said we had the house, we had the prenups, infidelity clause, we had everything we needed for a clean divorce. Kate refused to sign. Her counter-demand the house 60% of shared assets and spousal support. Her lawyer sent a letter claiming I had engaged in emotional abuse and surveillance. She wanted to go to trial. She wanted a stage. So I gave her one. I sent the explicit messages redacted of photos but not of content to the head of Kate's department. Not to students. Not to parents. To the one administrator who would understand exactly what since the back row meant. Who would understand that Rumi16 wasn't a username, it was a timestamp. The school launched an internal review within 48 hours. Kate was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Her colleagues, the same ones she'd recruited into her narrative, went quiet with the specific silence of people recalculating which side of history they're standing on. Kate called me that night. Not texted. Called. You'll never work in this town again, she said, her voice vibrating. Sign the papers, Kate. I will destroy. Sign the papers. Or the unredacted versions go to the Parents Association, the school board, and every platform where your students might see exactly who mentored them. Silence. The kind that has weight to it. She signed on Thursday. The divorce finalized 6 weeks later. I kept the house. She kept nothing she demanded. Rumi, last I heard from Priya, had accepted Victor's terms: full restitution, resignation, uncontested divorce. The alternative was a federal courtroom and a public record that would follow him into every job interview for the rest of his life. Priya messaged me once more after it was done. Asterisk, thank you for telling me the truth. I hope you find peace. Asterisk, I told her I hoped the same for her. Then I archived the conversation and deleted her number. Not out of coldness, out of necessity. She was a reminder of the worst chapter, and I couldn't keep rereading it. Gloria never spoke to me again. I don't blame her. Loving your child doesn't require liking what they've done, but it does require choosing them, and she chose. I sold the grill. The one I'd been standing at when Derek called. It was a good grill, but every time I looked at it, I heard that weighted pause before he said her name. I booked a trip to Montana. Solo. No Vegas, no beach resort, no performative post-divorce reinvention. Just mountains, cold air, and the kind of silence that doesn't have weight to it, the kind that's just silence. The man who never wanted to play dirty walked away having outplayed everyone. And the woman who guaranteed I'd come begging by Monday learned something that should have been obvious from the start. No one is untouchable. Especially not the people who are certain they are. My sister-in-law sat across from me at dinner, looked me dead in the eyes, and told me she'd be taking my 3-month-old baby home with her during the week so she could finally be a mother. And she wasn't joking. What started as years of quiet tension over her infertility exploded into a full psychiatric crisis after she watched me breastfeed my son, and within weeks, she was involuntarily committed after telling her psychiatrist. Things so alarming. They classified her as an active danger to me and my baby. Then, in our second story, a mother-in-law who works at the DMV decided to forge her own son's signature and slap her name on a car title that wasn't hers. So, I'm 36, married to Marcus, and Denise is his older sister. Craig is Denise's husband, and Patricia is my mother-in-law. In the second story, I'm 24, my fiancé is Derek, and his mother Lorraine works at the DMV, which she apparently thinks makes her above the law. Denise and I were never close, but we were civil. For 10 years, we shared holidays, swapped birthday gifts, and kept the kind of peace that holds a family together when two people simply don't click. The tension was always there, low-grade humming beneath every interaction, but I understood where it came from, and that understanding kept me patient longer than most people would have been. Denise was diagnosed with unexplained infertility at 30. By the time she was 35, she and Craig had burned through 3 rounds of IVF, 2 failed adoptions, and what Craig once quietly told Marcus was close to $90,000. Every pregnancy announcement in the family landed on her like a physical blow. When I had my first child, my daughter, now 4, Denise didn't come to the hospital. She sent flowers. Nobody blamed her. Grief makes people do strange things, and absence is one of the kinder options. But something shifted when I got pregnant with my son. Denise started calling more. Texting. Showing up at the house unannounced with baby clothes she'd bought. Neutral colors, expensive brands, tags still on. She asked to come to my ultrasound. She asked to be in the delivery room. Each request came wrapped in this desperate sweetness that made my stomach clench because I could see what was happening even if nobody else wanted to name it. She wasn't celebrating my pregnancy. She was auditioning for a role in it. Marcus told me I was reading too much into it. Patricia said Denise was finally healing. Craig said nothing, which I now realize was its own kind of alarm. My son was born in February. Healthy, perfect mind. Denise visited the hospital the day after delivery, held him for 40 minutes, and cried the entire time. Not quiet tears, deep shaking, sobs that made the nurses look at each other. When I gently took him back to feed him, she stood up and left without saying goodbye. 3 months passed. Denise pulled back again, fewer texts declined, 2 family dinners. Then Patricia organized a Sunday dinner at our house, insisted everyone come, said the family needed togetherness. I agreed because I was exhausted in choosing battles, and this one didn't seem worth fighting. Denise arrived with a diaper bag, not a purse. A fully stocked diaper bag, diapers, wipes, a change of clothes, formula, a pacifier for a baby she didn't have. I noticed it the second she walked in, and the hair on my arms stood straight up. Marcus didn't see it. Patricia didn't see it. Craig saw it. I watched his face go white, watched him lean into Denise and whisper something, watched her shake him off with a sharp jerk of her shoulder. Dinner was fine for the first 20 minutes. Normal conversation, my daughter showing Denise her drawings, Craig complimenting the food. Then my son started fussing in his bassinet. I picked him up, settled into the corner of the couch, and started breastfeeding. I'd done this 100 times in front of family. It was nothing. Denise went still. Not quiet time still, asterisk. Like something behind her eyes locked into place. She stared at my son, latched to my breast with an intensity that made me angle my body away from her instinctively. The room kept talking. Nobody noticed. I noticed. Then she spoke. "I've been thinking," she said, and the table conversation died. "It would be really good for the baby if he spent weekdays with me and Craig. I could create a real motherly bond with him. You'd still have weekends." Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. Denise, Craig said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We talked about this." "No times you times talked," she said, not breaking eye contact with me. "I'm talking now. It's only fair. You have 2. I have none. That's not balanced, and everyone at this table knows it. My daughter was sitting 3 feet away coloring. My son was still nursing. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out flat and hard in a way I didn't recognize. That is never going to happen. You don't get to decide that alone," Denise said. "Marcus, Patricia, this is a family decision." Marcus put his fork down. "Denise, you need to stop." "Why?" "Because she said so." Denise's voice cracked. "She gets everything. She gets times, everything times, and I get nothing. And nobody in this family has ever once, get out of my house." I said it while still holding my son, still feeding him. My body hadn't moved, but something in my face must have, because Craig was already standing, already reaching for Denise's arm. "We're leaving," Craig said. "Denise, now." She grabbed the diaper bag on her way out. That detail kept me up for 3 nights straight. Craig called Marcus at midnight. What he told us made my blood run cold. 2 nights before the dinner, Denise had tried to leave the house at 3 a.m. Craig found her in the car engine running, repeating that she needed to check on her baby. He'd also found her browser history, dozens of searches on how to induce lactation without pregnancy, how to establish custody of a relative's child, and how long a baby could survive on formula if the mother wasn't present. Craig was sobbing on the phone. He said he'd already made an appointment with a psychiatrist. The earliest opening was 10 days out. He was scared. He was sorry. He didn't know what she was becoming. Patricia moved into Craig and Denise's house the next morning. Not to visit, to watch. I changed every lock in our house, installed cameras on both doors, and called my daughter's preschool to update the pickup authorization list. Marcus handled it like Marcus handles everything, steady, methodical, quietly terrified underneath. We didn't sleep in the same rhythm for a week. One of us was always awake, always listening. Then the psychiatrist appointment finally came, and what Denise said in that room changed everything. Craig called Marcus on a Tuesday afternoon, which was unusual because Craig never called during work hours. Marcus stepped out of the kitchen. He runs a small catering operation, the kind that keeps your hands busy and your phone on silent, and came back 11 minutes later, looking like someone had hollowed him out from the sternum down. The psychiatrist is requesting an emergency evaluation, he said. Denise told her she has a plan. A plan for what? Marcus sat down at the table across from me. Our son was sleeping in the next room. Our daughter was at preschool. The house was quiet enough to hear the cameras click through their rotation cycle on the front porch monitor. She told the psychiatrist that she'd been chosen to raise our son, that I would eventually agree because I'd see it was right. That you were, he stopped, swallowed, that you were an obstacle and that obstacles get removed. My hands went to the table, flat, pressing down. Like if I didn't anchor myself to something solid, I'd come apart at the molecular level. She said that to a doctor in a session. She said it calmly. Craig said the psychiatrist told him Denise presented it like a logical argument. Step 1, step 2, step 3. She had times, contingencies, times, Marcus said. For if Craig didn't cooperate. For if Patricia sided with us. For if I didn't give him up. Marcus nodded. He couldn't say it again. The psychiatrist, Dr. Alana Voss, a name I will never forget, made the call that afternoon. Under state law, when a mental health professional determines a patient poses an imminent danger to a specific individual, they don't ask permission, they act. Doctor, Voss contacted the county crisis team. By 6 o'clock that evening, Denise was involuntarily committed to an inpatient psychiatric facility on a 72-hour hold that was extended within 48 hours to a minimum of 14 days. Craig called us from the facility parking lot. He wasn't sobbing this time. He was past that. His voice had the flat, scraped-out quality of a man who just watched his wife escorted through locked doors while she screamed his name. She thinks I betrayed her, he said. She thinks this is proof that the whole family is conspiring against her. Craig, I said, because Marcus couldn't? You saved her life. And you might have saved my son's? He hung up without responding. The next 72 hours were mechanical. I called the preschool again, not just to update the pickup list, but to provide Denise's photo and a physical description. I called our pediatrician's office and flagged the file. Marcus installed a deadbolt on the nursery door, which is something no parent should ever have to do, and something I stared at every single night while feeding my son at 2 a.m, wondering what kind of world requires a lock between a baby in the hallway of his own home. Patricia drove back and forth between the facility and Craig's house, like a woman running a supply line in wartime. She brought Craig meals, she brought Denise books and a blanket from home. She called me once on day 4 and said I failed her. I saw the signs and I called it healing because that was easier. I didn't argue with her. She was right. Marcus and I had the conversation every couple dreads, the one where you sit across from each other after the kids are asleep and say the quiet thing out loud. When she gets out, I said, she's not coming near this house. Ever. Ever. And holidays, birthdays, Patricia's. Marcus pressed his palms against his eyes. I don't know yet. But our kids come first. They come before Denise's feelings, before Craig's guilt, before my mother's need to hold this family together with both hands. Your sister is sick, Marcus. My sister described removing you like a task on a checklist. That's not sick in a way that earns her access to our children. That's sick in a way that means the door stays locked. He was right. I hated that he was right. We won't be moving. It's not feasible for us at the moment, but we have taken extra steps with security both at home and at the kitchen. This whole thing has taken a toll on my family, but Patricia, Craig, and the treatment team are taking care of Denise, and Marcus and I are focused on ensuring the safety of our immediate family and minimizing the effect on the kids as much we can. My daughter asked me last week why Aunt Denise doesn't come to dinner anymore. I told her Aunt Denise is getting help from some very good doctors. She accepted that the way 4-year-olds accept most things completely temporarily, with the unspoken promise of asking again later. My son is 5 months old now. He laughs when his sister makes faces at him. He grabs my hair when I carry him. He has no idea that someone mapped out a plan to take him from me with the calm precision of someone organizing a grocery list. I grieve for Denise. I do. I grieve for the woman who sent flowers when she couldn't bring herself to visit the hospital because that woman was surviving her pain without converting it into someone else's nightmare. That woman is gone now, or buried under something I am not qualified to excavate. It's an incredibly sad situation for both parties, and unfortunately, it's a reality for a lot of families out there. Infertility breaks people in ways that don't always look like breaking. Sometimes it looks like love misdirected and metastasized until the person carrying it can't tell the difference between wanting a child and wanting. Asterisk yours, asterisk. The deadbolt stays on the nursery door. The cameras stay on. Patricia stays in Craig's guest room. And I stay awake, one ear always tuned to the monitor, listening for sounds that don't belong in my house. The family survives. But the version of it that existed before that Sunday dinner, the one held together by civility and willful blindness, and the quiet agreement to never name what was growing in Denise's silence, that family is gone. We're building a different one now. Smaller, fortified, scarred in places that won't fully heal. But mine?
I've had the flu before. This wasn't it. This was a bone-deep exhaustion that made climbing the stairs to my bedroom feel like scaling a mountain. It was a constant queasy roll in my stomach that made the smell of my mom's cooking, usually my favorite thing in the world, send me running for the bathroom. "That's it," Mom said, standing in the doorway, her arms crossed. "I'm making you an appointment. This has been going on for 2 weeks." I just groaned from my bed. "It's a stomach bug, Mom. It'll pass." "It's not passing," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Dr. Evans can see you tomorrow at 4. So, the next day, I found myself sitting on crinkly paper in a cold exam room, staring at a poster of the human circulatory system. Dr. Evans came in, her smile as warm and clinical as ever. "So Maya, your mom says you haven't been feeling well." I listed the symptoms. The fatigue, the nausea, the weird dizzy spells. She listened, nodding, typing notes into her little laptop. "Any chance you could be pregnant?" she asked, her eyes not leaving the screen. I actually laughed. "No. 0 chance." She finally looked at me. "Are you sexually active?" "I have a boyfriend," I said. "But we haven't. You know. I'm a virgin." It felt so juvenile to say out loud. But it was the truth. Liam and I had talked about it. We were waiting. We were careful. We did other stuff, sure, but never that. Never. Dr. Evans just nodded. "Okay. Well, standard procedure, will run a urine test anyway just to rule it out. It's the easiest thing to check off the list." She handed me a plastic cup. I went, did my business, and came back feeling like we were wasting time. 20 minutes later, she knocked and re-entered the room, but this time she closed the door softly behind her. She wasn't smiling. "Maya," she said, sitting on the stool across from me. I need you to listen to me very carefully." My blood went cold. "What is it? Is it bad?" She took a breath. "Your urine test came back positive. You're pregnant." The world tilted. The circulatory system poster on the wall blurred into a swirl of red and blue. "No. That's impossible. I told you I'm a virgin." The test is wrong. You have to do it again. We did, she said gently. We ran it twice. The results are conclusive. But how my voice was a tiny cracking whisper. How is that possible? This is where the conversation went from unbelievable to downright science fiction. She started talking about something called outer course. How if semen is present near the vaginal opening even without penetration, it's possible. The sperm can travel. She said it was extraordinarily rare. A 1 in a million medical anomaly. Like being struck by lightning. It's the only explanation, assuming what you're telling me is true. She finished, her face a mask of professional sympathy. I just stared at her, my hands numb. 1 in a million. I'd been struck by lightning. I don't remember leaving the clinic. I think I nodded and mumbled thank you. I found myself in my car clutching a folder full of pamphlets with smiling pregnant women on them. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. Liam. I had to tell Liam. I didn't even call. I just drove my mind a blank white-hot panic. I screeched into his driveway and was pounding on his front door before I even cut the engine. He opened it, a wide, easy smile on his face that disappeared the second he saw mine. Maya. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. We need to talk, I choked out. We sat on the edge of his bed, the space between us feeling like a canyon. I couldn't look at him. I just stared at the band poster on his wall, while the words tumbled out of my mouth in a messy, tear-soaked rush. The doctor's visit. The test. The impossible explanation. When I finally finished, the silence was deafening. I risked a glance at him. His face was pale, his jaw tight. So you're pregnant, he said, his voice flat. Yes, but Liam, it's yours. It has to be, Dr. Evans said. Don't he cut me off, standing up and pacing the room. Just don't. He ran a hand through his hair, not looking at me. You're telling me you got pregnant without having sex? Yes. That's what I'm trying to explain. It's this crazy rare thing. But it's possible. He finally stopped pacing and turned to face me. The look in his eyes shattered me. It wasn't anger. It was a deep, hollow disappointment. Who was it, Maya? What? No, Liam, you're not listening to me. I stood up, reaching for him. But he flinched back like I was on fire. Stop lying. He yelled, his voice cracking. Just tell me the truth. It'll be better than this. This insane story you made up. It's not a story. It's the truth. Tears were streaming down my face, now hot and useless. You have to believe me. He just shook his head slowly, a single bitter laugh escaping his lips. I really trusted you, he whispered. It was quieter than his yelling, but it hit me 10 times harder. That was it. The conversation was over. He walked me to the door, his body stiff, his face unreadable. I think you should go, he said. Liam, please. Goodbye, Maya. He shut the door in my face. I sat in my car, unable to move for what felt like hours. My phone buzzed. A text from him. My heart leaped with a stupid, desperate hope. I opened it. Asterisk. Don't contact me again. Asterisk. Then the second message. Asterisk. You have been blocked by this user. Asterisk. The next day at school was a nightmare. It started with whispers. I saw my best friend Chloe in a huddle with Liam's friend Mark by the lockers. They saw me and their conversation died instantly. Chloe wouldn't meet my eye. At lunch, I walked toward our usual table. Our group went silent. Liam was there staring at his tray, his face like stone. Chloe shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. I stood there holding my tray, feeling like the whole world was staring at me. No one said a word. No one moved to make room. I turned and walked away, dumping my untouched lunch in the trash and hiding in a bathroom stall until the bell rang. The text stopped. The Snapchats, the invites to the group chat, all gone. It was like I had been surgically removed from my own life. The rumor was everywhere Maya cheated. Maya's pregnant with some random guy's baby. Maya's a liar. My world shrank to the four walls of my bedroom. The nausea was a constant reminder. Every morning I'd wake up, and for one blissful second I'd forget. Then the sickness would roll in, and the memory of Liam's face, the dead silence at the lunch table, the word times, blocked times on my phone screen would come crashing back down. I was alone. Utterly and completely alone, trapped inside a truth that nobody would ever believe. The exhaustion wasn't just physical anymore. It was in my soul. I was drowning. One Friday night, a week after my life had imploded, I found myself scrolling numbly through Instagram. A new post from Chloe. A group picture from that night. They were all at the bowling alley. Our spot. They were all laughing. Liam was in the middle of the shot, his arm slung casually around a girl from our English class. He was smiling. I felt the familiar lurch in my stomach and barely made it to the bathroom in time, collapsing onto the cold tile floor as my body heaved. I was empty, hollowed out. There was nothing left to throw up. There was nothing left at all. Except for the impossible one in a million thing growing inside me. A knock on my bedroom door made me jump. It was late, almost midnight. Maya. My mom's voice soft. Liam is here. He's downstairs. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hadn't seen or heard from him in 2 weeks. 2 weeks of silence and public shaming. I pulled on a sweatshirt over my pajamas and walked down the stairs like I was heading to my own execution. He was standing awkwardly in the foyer, refusing to look at me. He looked thinner, exhausted. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice flat and hard. "Can we talk, please?" We ended up in his car, the engine off, the streetlights painting stripes across the dashboard. The silence stretched until it was screaming. "I'm sorry," he finally said, staring at his hands on the steering wheel. The way I acted, it was crap. I was hurt and confused, and I was a total ass. I didn't say anything. An apology wasn't going to erase the memory of him slamming the door in my face or the sight of his arm around another girl. I couldn't sleep, he continued, his voice rough. "Your story?" It just kept playing in my head. It sounded so crazy. So I started looking things up. He finally turned to look at me, his eyes pleading. I typed "pregnant but a virgin" into Google Maya. I felt like a complete idiot. But stuff came up. Medical articles, case studies. They called it splash pregnancy or something. It's rare, like you said. Like lightning. I stared out the windshield. "So you believe Google, but you couldn't believe me." He flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I snapped, a bubble of cold fury rising in my chest. "You blocked me, Liam. You let everyone, Chloe, Mark, all of them, think I'm some cheating whore. I had to hide in a bathroom stall at lunch because our friends looked at me like I was garbage. A text from you would have stopped it. But you were too busy bowling. The words hit him like a physical blow. He sagged against the seat. I know. I messed up. I messed up so badly. I don't know if it's my baby Maya. I honestly don't. But I know I shouldn't have left you to go through this alone. I want to be here. Whatever happens. What does be here even mean? I whispered. It means we tell your parents. Together, he said, his voice gaining a sliver of strength. And then, we figure out the rest. Telling my parents was the second worst conversation of my life. We sat them down at the kitchen table the next morning. Mom's face went from confused to horrified to something soft and sad. Dad just got quiet, his jaw tight, his hand resting on Mom's shoulder. I explained everything: the doctor's visit, the 1 in a million odds, the whole impossible truth. Liam sat beside me, silent, but present, confirming the outer course part. When my voice failed me. When I finished, my mom just looked at me, her eyes wet. Oh, honey, you've been carrying this all by yourself. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't just sick or angry. I was a scared 16-year-old. I crumpled and my mom was there, wrapping her arms around me. We're here, she said, rocking me gently. We'll figure this out. We're all going to figure this out. The next week was a blur of appointments. Liam came to every single one. We sat side by side for the ultrasound, the air thick with unspoken fear. The technician squirted cold jelly on my stomach, and a grainy black and white image flickered onto the screen. A tiny pulsating blip. A heartbeat. I felt Liam's hand find mine, his fingers cold but firm. It was real. A real thing living inside me. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with morning sickness. After we sat in a genetic counselor's office to arrange the prenatal paternity test, it was a simple blood draw from me and a cheek swab from Liam. The results will be back in 7 to 10 business days, the counselor said cheerfully. 7 to 10 days of waiting for a verdict. Liam drove me home in silence. As I got out of the car, he grabbed my arm. Maya, he said. Whatever it says. I'm sorry. I know, I said. And I think I was starting to believe him. The call came 9 days later. I was in my room trying to do homework when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was Dr. Evans. Maya, I have the results of the paternity test, she said. Her voice even. Is Liam with you? He's on his way over, I lied, my heart pounding. Just tell me. The test concludes that Liam is the biological father, she said. The probability is 99.99%. It's definitive. Vindication. It washed over me, so sharp and overwhelming it felt like pain. I wasn't a liar. I wasn't crazy. I was just the unluckiest girl in the world. When Liam arrived 10 minutes later, I just handed him the phone. I had Dr. Evans's office email the official lab report. He stood in my driveway and read it, his face unreadable. He read it again. Then he slowly sank onto the porch steps and put his head in his hands. I sat down next to him, leaving a foot of space between us. I'm a monster, he whispered into his palms. No, you're not, I said, my own voice hollow. You were just a guy who heard something impossible. He finally looked up, his eyes red. How do we fix this? That's when we talked about the other decision. The one we'd both been avoiding. We couldn't have a baby. We were kids. This whole thing was born out of a nightmare, a medical fluke that had destroyed my life. Bringing a child into that felt wrong. It was a heavy, awful adult decision, and we made it together sitting on my front steps. Our state had a mandatory waiting period and parental consent laws that felt like another layer of public humiliation I couldn't bear. We found a service online, a telehealth provider that worked with a pharmacy in a neighboring state. It was all discreet. A video call with a doctor who asked gentle questions, and a few days later a small plain cardboard box arrived. That Saturday we did it at my house. My parents went out for the day, giving us space. Liam sat with me on my bathroom floor. I took the first pill. Then hours later the second set. The cramping started an hour after that. It was a deep gut-wrenching pain that made me gasp. It came in waves, each one pulling a broken sob from my chest. Liam held my hand, his face pale. He got me a heating pad and a glass of water. His movements quiet and useless against the biological reality of what was happening. It was messy and painful and deeply, profoundly sad. As I lay curled up on the tile, he held a cool washcloth to my forehead. "I'm so sorry, Maya," he kept saying over and over like a prayer. "I'm so sorry." Later that night, the worst of it was over. I was lying in my bed, hollowed out and exhausted. Liam was curled up in the armchair across the room watching me sleep. The crisis was over. The lie was dead. The secret was gone. He must have seen my eyes open. "Hey," he whispered. He came over and sat on the edge of my bed. He took my hand. It was the first time we had touched without a sense of dread or obligation in a month. "Chloe texted me," he said quietly. "She heard we were back together. She asked if the baby was mine." I felt a flicker of the old anger. "What did you say?" "I sent her a picture of the paternity test," he said, his voice flat. "I didn't add anything else. Just the picture." My revenge wasn't a satisfying, fiery explosion. It was a cold, clinical PDF file sent over text. It was silence. It was the truth. "It's over," I said, more to myself than to him. "Yeah," he said, squeezing my hand. "It is." But it didn't feel over. We had survived the lightning strike. But now we had to live in the world it had scorched. The phone call felt like a summons. My mother-in-law Brenda has a way of speaking that isn't a request, it's a royal decree wrapped in fake sweetness. "Cynthia, darling," she began, the word darling sliding out like something oily. "Just a reminder that Leo's birthday is this Saturday. We're expecting you, and Liam it too." I took a deep breath, the plastic tubing of my oxygen cannula cool against my skin. "Of course, Brenda. We'll be there." "Wonderful. Mark is grilling burgers. I do hope your delicate constitution can handle some real food for a change." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, my husband Liam's reflection looking back at me from the dark screen. He'd heard every word. "You don't have to go," he said, his voice tight. "We can just send a gift. It's your nephew's 5th birthday, Liam. I'm not going to be the reason you miss it." I tried to smile. "It'll be fine. I'll pre-medicate." That was the understatement of the century. Pre-medicating for a trip to my in-laws' house was a strategic military operation. My body is a war zone, and my own immune system is the enemy. It's called mast cell activation syndrome, or MCAS. In simple terms, my mast cells. The first responders of the immune system are paranoid lunatics. They see threats everywhere: a change in temperature, a whiff of perfume, stress, and a laundry list of foods. When they freak out, they release a chemical tsunami: histamine, tryptase, prostaglandins that can cause anything from hives and brain fog to full-blown anaphylactic shock. To them, I'm not sick. I'm a manipulative hypochondriac who concocted a bizarre, unpronounceable illness to control their son and get attention. Every symptom is an act, every precaution a power play. Saturday morning, I began the ritual. 2 hours before we had to leave, I took a high-dose H1 blocker. An hour and a half out, an H2 blocker. An hour out, a mast cell stabilizer. 30 minutes before, a dose of oral cromolyn sodium. My purse wasn't a purse, it was a mobile pharmacy. 2 EpiPens, liquid Benadryl, a rescue inhaler, a vial of steroids, my emergency protocol card. I felt less like a guest and more like a soldier gearing up for battle. Liam watched me, his jaw clenched. "They don't deserve you," he muttered, grabbing the cooler bag with my safe water bottle and a protein bar just in case. "It's for Leo," I said, as much for myself as for him. "We'll stay for an hour." Cake, presents, then we're gone. In and out. The moment we stepped into my brother-in-law Mark's backyard, the assault began. The air was thick with the scent of cheap charcoal, Mark's overbearing cologne, and my sister-in-law Karen's perfume. My throat immediately felt tight. Brenda descended upon us, her eyes scanning me from head to toe, lingering on the faint flush already rising on my neck. "Cynthia, you made it. I was so worried you'd have one of your episodes." She patted my arm with condescending pity. Mark was at the grill, a king in his kiss the cook apron. He was a caricature of a suburban dad, all craft beer and unsolicited opinions. He gave Liam a bro hug and gave me a nod. "Hey, Cynthia. Don't worry, the grill master is on duty. Nothing too exotic for you today." He winked, and I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. We found a spot on the patio, as far away from the grill smoke as possible. Liam was a perfect shield, intercepting family members and keeping conversations short. But I could feel their eyes on me. Every time I sipped my own water, I saw Karen whisper to her mother. Every time I discreetly checked my pulse on my smartwatch, I saw Mark smirk. They were waiting for the performance to begin. About 30 minutes and Mark started plating the burgers. "Chow time," he yelled. Liam's protective instincts kicked in. He walked over to the grill. I watched from a distance, reading his body language. He was pointing at the patties, then at me. He came back with a plate carrying a single bunless burger patty. I watched him take it right off the grill, he assured me. I asked him 3 times. He swore it's 100% ground beef. No seasoning, no fillers. He even used a separate spatula. I looked at the patty. It looked fine. A little pale, maybe. But I was hungry, and refusing to eat would just add fuel to their fire. It would be another tally in the "Cynthia is a controlling drama queen" column. "Thank you," I said, giving Liam a grateful smile. I took a small bite. The texture was slightly off, a little soft, but I chalked it up to cheap meat. I ate about half of it, pushing the rest around my plate while pretending to be engaged in a conversation about Leo's new bike. But then it started. It began as a faint metallic taste in my mouth, a familiar, unwelcome harbinger. Then came the itch, a deep under the skin prickling that started in my scalp and crawled down my back. My stomach cramped, a low, ominous churn. "I'm not feeling great," I whispered to Liam, my voice suddenly thick. "My stomach is starting to hurt." He was on his feet in a second. Okay, we're leaving. Right now. There were no long goodbyes. Liam just grabbed my arm and steered me toward the side gate, calling out a quick Leo happy birthday. We've got to run. Brenda's voice cut through the party chatter. Leaving so soon, is the drama starting already? We ignored her. We were almost to the gate, almost to the safety of our car when Mark blocked our path. He was holding a spatula like a scepter, a greasy, triumphant grin plastered on his face. Hey, where are you two off to? He asked, his tone dripping with false innocence. Cynthia's not feeling well. We have to go, Liam said, his voice flat and cold. Mark's grin widened. He looked from Liam's grim face to my pale one, a flicker of something cruel and calculating in his eyes. He leaned in as if sharing a great secret. Oh, that's a shame, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I was just wondering what she thought of the burger. He paused, letting the moment hang in the air. Pretty convincing for a plant-based patty, right? You can barely taste the soy and pea protein. The world tilted. For a second, the sound of the party kids, laughing Brenda's shrill voice, faded into a dull roar like I was underwater. All I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears and Mark's words echoing. Asterisk soy and pea protein. Asterisk. Two of my biggest triggers. Liam moved so fast he was just a blur. One moment he was beside me, the next he had Mark by the collar of his stupid apron, slamming him against the side of the house. The spatula clattered to the patio. What did you do? Liam's voice wasn't a yell. It was lower, deadlier. A sound I'd never heard from him before. Hey, man, relax. It was a joke, Mark squeaked, his face pale. My throat was closing. It felt like I was trying to breathe through a straw that was being pinched shut. A fiery rash was exploding across my chest, hot and agonizingly itchy. I fumbled for my purse, my fingers suddenly clumsy and useless. Liam, I rasped. The single word took all the air I had. He dropped Mark like a bag of trash and was at my side instantly. He saw my face, my swollen lips, the hives blooming on my neck. He didn't need any more explanation. He ripped open my purse, his hands shaking as he grabbed the first EpiPen. He tore off the cap, jabbed the needle hard into my thigh, right through my jeans, and held it there. The world was shrinking to a pinprick. My vision was tunneling. The shot of epinephrine was like a lightning strike to my heart, a violent jolt that did almost nothing to stop the rising tide. It's not working, I gasped, clutching his arm. Benadryl. He helped me chug the little cup of cherry-flavored liquid as we stumbled toward the car. I could hear Karen shouting behind us. Oh my God, here we go. The big show begins. Liam got me into the passenger seat and slammed the door. As he ran around to the driver's side, I saw Brenda standing on the porch, arms crossed, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated disgust. Not concern. Not fear. Disgust. The moment the car was in gear, Liam was on the phone with 911. My wife is in anaphylactic shock. I gave her an EpiPen, it's not working. We're on the northbound freeway just past the Elm Street exit. I used my second EpiPen. Another violent jolt. Still nothing. My breaths were shallow, wheezing whistles. The world was going soft and dark at the edges. I could feel my blood pressure plummeting, that terrifying sensation of my own body shutting down. Stay with me, Cynthia, Liam begged, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping mine. His knuckles were white. Just stay with me. They're coming. I tried to answer, but all that came out was a faint gurgle. On the side of the freeway with cars rocketing past us, it happened. My airway closed completely. The wheezing stopped. There was just silence. An absolute crushing pressure in my chest. I was dying. In that moment, I knew I was dying. My last thought wasn't of love or memories, it was a flash of Mark's smug, triumphant face. Then the car was flooded with light. The paramedics were there pulling me out, shouting things I couldn't understand. Someone was cutting my shirt open. I felt a sharp prick in my arm as they started an IV. A mask was forced over my face. Then came the blessed burning rush of medication flooding my veins. Magnesium. Solumedrol. More epinephrine. Slowly, painfully, like forcing a locked door, my airway began to open. The first ragged, searing breath of oxygen felt like swallowing fire and glass. I was sobbing. Liam was sobbing, and the paramedics were just calm, steady voices in the chaos. They saved my life on a strip of asphalt next to a drainage ditch. 4 hours in the ER felt like a lifetime. When they finally discharged me, battered and exhausted, we drove home in silence. The trauma was a heavy blanket smothering us both. When we walked in the door, Liam just held me, his body trembling with the aftershocks of rage and terror. The next day, I was propped up in bed, an oxygen cannula back in my nose, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The anger was starting to burn through the fog of exhaustion. Not just at Mark, but at the whole system of disbelief I'd been fighting for years. I picked up my phone. I didn't name names. I didn't mention a party. I just wrote a simple public post on Facebook. A friendly PSA. If you're preparing food for others, please be honest about the ingredients. Secretly substituting things can have devastating, life-threatening consequences for people with food allergies and mast cell disorders. It isn't a cute trick. It's a dangerous gamble with someone else's life. I thought it was measured. I thought it was important. I was naive. Within 10 minutes, my phone blew up. It was a text from Karen. A wall of furious words. Asterisk, how dare you? You air our family business on the internet to make my brother look bad. You are the most disgusting, manipulative, attention-seeking person I have ever met. You have ruined this family. You are dead to me. And Liam is dead to me for choosing a psycho like you. Asterisk. My hands were shaking. Before I could even show Liam, my phone started ringing. It was Brenda. I put it on speaker. I have never in my entire life been so ashamed, she began, her voice quivering with theatrical rage. Do you have any idea what you've done? Mark is beside himself. You post that times accusation times online, trying to turn everyone against him. He made a mistake. A simple mistake. A mistake. Liam's voice was dangerously quiet. He lied to my face, Mom. He watched her eat something he knew could hurt her. She almost died. Oh. Don't be so dramatic, she shrieked. She's fine, isn't she? Always fine in the end after the big performance is over. You're tearing this family apart over a hamburger. You two and your constant need for drama. You're such martyrs, both of you. So desperate to be the victims. Martyrs? The word hung in the air, cold and sharp. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the key that unlocked the absolute truth of their hatred. They didn't think I was faking. They didn't just misunderstand. They knew. They saw me turn blue on their lawn and they didn't care. They saw my husband screaming for help and felt inconvenience. My near-death experience was less important than their son's bruised ego. They would rather I was dead than for one of them to have to say I'm sorry. Liam took the phone from my hand. "We're done," he said. His voice hollowed out, devoid of all emotion. "What did you say?" Brenda sputtered. "We are done. You, Karen, Mark, all of you. You are no longer a part of our lives. Don't call. Don't text. Don't come to our house. If you see us in public, you will walk the other way. You don't have a son anymore." He hung up the phone and blocked her number. Then he blocked Karen's. Then Mark's. He methodically went through his contacts, erasing his entire family one by one. When he was finished, he sat on the edge of the bed and dropped his head into his hands. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a door being slammed shut forever. It was the sound of a family breaking. But it was also the sound of a cage opening. It was the sound of us choosing to live. I hate my phone. Not the device itself, it's a perfectly good soul-sucking rectangle of glass and aluminum, but the fact that it connects me to people I actively try to avoid. Specifically my family. The caller ID flashed Mom. I showed the screen to my wife Sarah, who was peacefully reading on the couch. She gave me a look that was 1 part pity, 2 parts don't you dare. I answered, "Hey Mom. Mark, honey. Are you two on your way?" The forced cheerfulness was a weapon, and she was an expert marksman. On our way, where I asked, playing dumb. It was my only defense. "The barbecue for your father. Don't tell me you forgot." I had absolutely 100% forgotten. On purpose. Ah, shoot. Sarah and I had plans, Mom. We were just heading out. Sarah shot me a glare. Liar. Cancel them. Mom said, the cheerfulness evaporating. Your sisters are already here with the kids. Your father wants to see you. This was the classic pincer move. Guilt from her obligation to him. The thing is, I knew for a fact my father wanted nothing more than to be left alone with a book and a silent television. This wasn't for him. It was for her. It was always for her. Mark. She pleaded, her voice dropping into that whiny, manipulative tone that made my teeth ache. Please? Just for a little while. It would mean the world to your father. I looked at Sarah. She sighed, closed her book, and gave a tiny defeated nod. She knew, just like I did, that the hour of pain now would be better than the week of guilt trip voicemails that would follow if we refused. Fine, I grumbled. We'll be there in 20. But we can't stay long. Wonderful drive, safe, click. Sarah stood up and stretched. How bad do you think it's going to be? On a scale of 1 to dumpster fire, I said, grabbing my keys. I'm betting on Inferno. I was an optimist. We pulled up to my parents' suburban home 20 minutes later, and the scene was already pure chaos. The front lawn looked like a vending machine had exploded, scattering juice boxes and chip bags everywhere. Shrill, indistinguishable screaming echoed from the backyard, punctuated by the tinny blast of some top 40 station I didn't recognize. Deep breaths, Sarah muttered as we got out of the car. Find your happy place. My happy place was anywhere but here. We walked through the side gate into the backyard, and it was like stepping onto the set of a disaster movie. My two sisters, Linda and Karen, were huddled by a cooler already deep into a box of rosé. Their husbands, Chad and Greg, were manning the grill, Coors Lights in hand. surrounded by a plume of greasy smoke that suggested something was going very, very wrong with the burgers. And then there were the kids. The gremlins. 7 of them in total, ranging from 4 to 10. A shrieking feral pack of them running wild and completely unsupervised. My mom rushed over her face, a mask of frazzled hospitality. "You made it, I'm so glad." She hugged me then, "Sarah, your sisters are, well, they're in a mood. And the kids are a little wound up." "A little," I said, watching my nephew Kyle use a pool noodle to whack his younger cousin over the head. Nobody seemed to notice or care. "Oh, you know," Mom said with a dismissive wave. "Kids will be kids." I spotted my dad. He'd already executed his signature escape maneuver. He was sequestered in the far corner of the pool, half submerged in the bubbling whirlpool, sunglasses on, a frosty beer perched on the edge. He gave me a slow, knowing nod. It was a gesture of pure solidarity. "You're in the trenches now, son. Godspeed." Marky Karen shrieked from across the yard, sloshing pink wine from her plastic cup. "Be a doll and grab your big sis another bottle from the garage fridge, would ya?" "Get it yourself, Karen," I said without looking at her. Sarah nudged me. "Be nice?" "That was me being nice," I muttered. We tried to find a quiet corner, a small island of sanity in the sea of madness, but it was no use. The chaos was magnetic. We were just standing there, trying to look pleasant, when a neighbor from next door, a friendly guy named Dave, poked his head over the fence. "Hey, Frank, smells good over here," he called out to my dad, who pointedly ignored him. Greg, Karen's husband, waved him in. "Come on over, Dave, grab a beer." Dave, a man who clearly made poor life choices, accepted. He came through the gate, a hopeful smile on his face. He was wearing khaki shorts, a polo shirt, and brand new looking white sneakers. He was an innocent, a lamb to the slaughter. He made the fatal mistake of standing near the edge of the pool to talk to Chad. I saw it happen in slow motion. The gremlin pack stopped their various acts of terror. A silent predatory signal passed between them. Their eyes locked on Dave. 3 of the older ones, Linda's twin boys, and Karen's oldest daughter, peeled off from the group. They lowered their shoulders and broke into a dead sprint. "Guys, no," I said, but it was too late. The trio hit Dave like a tiny sugar-fueled battering ram. He yelped, arms flailing, and tumbled backward into the deep end with a massive splash. He surfaced a moment later, sputtering, his polo shirt plastered to his chest, his face a perfect blend of shock and fury. The backyard erupted, not with concern, but with laughter. My sisters were bent over cackling. Chad and Greg were howling, slapping their knees. "Oh my God," Linda gasped, wiping away a tear of mirth. "They got you so good, Dave." Sarah and I were the only ones not laughing. I walked over to the edge of the pool. "You okay, man?" Dave slicked his wet hair back, his jaw tight. "I'm fine," he seethed. His phone was in his pocket. His wallet, too. Probably his keys. He hoisted himself out of the pool, dripping and humiliated. "Lighten up, Dave," Karen shouted. "It was just a prank. Kids are having fun." Dave didn't say another word. He just shot a murderous look at my laughing sisters, then stalked back toward the gate, leaving a trail of chlorinated water behind him. The laughter died down as he left, but the energy in the yard had shifted. The gremlins had tasted blood. They were amped up, victorious, scanning the horizon for their next victim. I tried to fade into the background, grabbing a bottle of water and retreating to a spot near the patio door. I just had to survive another 30 minutes. I could do it. I could be a ghost. But you can't hide from predators. I felt it before I saw it. A sudden quiet in the shrieking. A change in the air. I looked up from my water bottle and saw them. 3 of them. Kyle, Dylan, and Chloe. The same 3 who had sacrificed Dave to the pool gods. They were standing 20 yards away near the smoking grill. And they were staring right at me. A slow, wicked grin spread across Kyle's face. He nodded to the other 2. There was no mistaking the intent. I was standing maybe 5 feet from the pool's edge. I was the next target. They lowered their heads. They started to run. Their little legs churned, picking up speed, a thundering of tiny feet on the grass. They were a unified force of destruction, a heat-seeking missile of childhood malice aimed directly at my back. I had a split second, a single moment to decide. Let them hit me, sacrifice my phone, my wallet, my dignity, all for their parents' twisted amusement. Or not. Their gleeful war cry shrieks filled the air as they closed the distance. 10 feet? 5 feet. I saw them coming. I am Alexander, and here's your story. It wasn't a decision so much as an instinct. A flick of a switch between victim and not today. At the last possible fraction of a second, I took one simple calm step to my left. Physics did the rest. The 3-child projectile, having aimed for a stationary object that was no longer there, had nowhere to go but forward. Their combined momentum was impressive. They shot past the spot where I'd been standing, a tangle of flailing limbs and surprised shrieks, and plunged directly into the deep end of the pool. The splash was enormous. For a single beautiful second, there was silence, broken only by the sound of displaced water slapping against the concrete. Then all hell broke loose. "My baby's Linda!" shrieked her rosé, slurred voice cutting through the air like a siren. Karen was right behind her. "What the hell did you do, Mark?" They scrambled toward the pool, all pretense of tipsy fun gone, replaced by screeching, panicked rage. Chad and Greg dropped their tongs and sprinted over, their faces red with booze and anger. I didn't move. I just stood there watching the chaos I had failed to become a part of. Kyle and Dylan surfaced, sputtering and coughing, their eyes wide with shock. But Chloe, the youngest of the trio, was thrashing her head, bobbing under the water. "She can't swim," Linda screamed, pointing a trembling, accusatory finger at me. "You idiot, she can't swim." Greg, a man who outweighed me by a good 50 pounds of beer and bad choices, dove in with a clumsy belly flop that sent a tidal wave over the side. He grabbed Chloe and hauled her to the steps, where she sat coughing up chlorinated water and crying. The other 2, Kyle and Dylan, were paddling frantically. "My phone," Dylan wailed, pointing toward the bottom of the pool. "Mom's phone was in my pocket." "Mine too," Kyle yelled. "Dad's." And there it was. The real source of the panic. Not the near drowning, but the submerged electronics. Karen whirled on me, her face a grotesque mask of fury. "Are you happy now? You could have killed her. And Greg's brand new iPhone is ruined. What is wrong with you?" "Me," I said, my voice dangerously calm. Sarah had moved to my side, her hand on my arm. "I didn't do anything. I just moved. Maybe if you were watching your children instead of power drinking cheap wine, they wouldn't have been using a human being as a bowling pin." "They're kids," Chad bellowed, stepping up to me, jabbing a finger in my chest. "They were just having fun. You're supposed to just take it. It's a joke." Pushing a 40-year-old man into a pool is a joke. Sarah shot back, her voice firm. Ruining his phone is a joke. What's wrong with you people? You don't have kids, you wouldn't understand. Linda sobbed, cradling her dripping, traumatized daughter, who was now more upset about the lost phone than the lack of oxygen. I understand negligence, I said, looking from Linda to Karen to their idiot husbands. I understand that your kids nearly drowned themselves. And you're more pissed off about 2 phones at the bottom of the pool. It's your job to watch them. Not mine, not your neighbors. Yours. My mom was fluttering in the background, wringing her hands. Mark, please just apologize. Let's not fight. I looked past them all toward the whirlpool. My dad hadn't moved. He'd taken off his sunglasses and was watching the entire scene unfold with the detached interest of a man watching a nature documentary. He met my eyes and gave me the slightest of nods. It was all the confirmation I needed. Apologize. I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. For what? For not letting your feral offspring assault me for your entertainment? No. I'm not apologizing. You're lucky I'm not calling Child Protective Services. That was a mistake. Or maybe it was exactly the right thing to say. Greg had managed to hoist himself out of the pool. He was dripping, furious and unsteady on his feet. You son of a bitch, he slurred, stomping toward me. You think you can come into our house? It's my father's house, I corrected him. You think you can come here and endanger my kid? He was trying to be intimidating, puffing out his chest. But the combination of adrenaline, alcohol, and a waterlogged brain was too much for him. He took one more aggressive step, his foot slipped on a wet patch of concrete, and his arms pinwheeled wildly. He went down face first with a wet, meaty smack. He lay there groaning, a perfect metaphor for the entire afternoon. Nobody moved to help him. Okay, Sarah said, grabbing my hand. We're done here. We turned and walked away. The screaming followed us, a chorus of blame and vitriol. You're an asshole, Mark. This is all your fault. You're paying for those phones. We didn't look back. We walked through the side gate past the exploded vending machine lawn and got in our car. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, leaving the suburban inferno behind us. The silence in the car was heavy for a full 2 minutes. Well, Sarah said, finally staring out the window. I'd say that went about as expected. I snorted. I owe you $1,000 and a week-long vacation. Damn right you do, she said, but she was smiling. She reached over and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, you know. I know. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out at the next red light. A new group text had been created. Family emergency. I was the only one in it besides my sisters, their husbands, and my mother. Karen Times. You are a monster. Chloe has a scratch on her knee because of you. Asterisk. Linda Times, I hope you're proud of yourself. $2,000 in phones gone because you couldn't just be a good sport. You're paying us back. Asterisk. Chad Times. Your dad is so disappointed in you. Asterisk. That was the one that made me laugh. I glanced at the rearview mirror, picturing him in his whirlpool, the king on his bubbling throne, watching the empire burn. Disappointed. He was probably the proudest he'd been of me in years. Mom Times Mark. please call me. This can all be fixed if you just say you're sorry. Asterisk. I showed the screen to Sarah. She read the messages and shook her head slowly. They're insane, she said. Actually, medically insane. They're not insane, I said, turning the phone over in my hand. They're just selfish, entitled idiots who never grew up. And they're raising a new generation of them. I held my thumb over the leave conversation button. It felt like the culmination of decades of this nonsense. All the forced holidays, the biting my tongue, the playing along with the jokes. It was all a build-up to this. A choice. The same choice I'd had at the edge of the pool. Let them shove me or step aside. I stepped aside. I blocked every number in the group. Linda, Karen, Chad, Greg, even my mom. I knew she was just their pawn, but enablers are part of the machine. What about your dad? Sarah asked quietly. Dad and I have an understanding, I said. He'll call me from the landline tomorrow when everyone's gone. We drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. I knew the war wasn't over. There would be voicemails, emails, attempts to get other relatives involved. But for the first time, I didn't feel dread. I didn't feel guilt. I felt the clean, quiet peace of a door firmly closed. They could have their chaos. They could have their little idiots and their broken phones and their boxed wine. I had my sanity, and I wasn't giving it up for anyone. The phone buzzed on my desk, a low, angry vibration against the polished wood. I glanced at the screen. A single text from Chloe. Asterisk, he knows. Mark knows everything. Asterisk. My blood went cold. Not a slow chill, but an instant icy shock. Like being dropped into a frozen lake. I snatched the phone, my thumb hovering over her name. My office, with its view of the city and the stupid motivational poster about synergy, suddenly felt like a cage. My tie felt like a noose. For 6 years, it was a clean, separate box. That was the rule. My life was with Sarah, my wife. The 90%, she was the mortgage, the PTA meetings, the Saturday morning trips to the farmer's market, the inside jokes nobody else got. She was the warm weight next to me in bed, the mother of my 2 kids, the anchor of my entire world. I loved her. That was never the question. Chloe was the other 10%. The box. She was the dark bars, with no names, the anonymous hotel rooms, the things I wanted that Sarah didn't. The kinks, the specific dirty little appetites that didn't fit into our clean suburban life. It was just a release valve. A biological need, compartmentalized and controlled. It meant nothing more than that. I told myself that so many times it felt like gospel. Now Mark knew. And the box was about to explode all over the 90%. I drove home on autopilot, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Every red light was an eternity. Every passing car held a potential threat. Was that him? Did he follow me? My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. When I walked through the door, the smell of roasting chicken hit me. My 7-year-old daughter, Maya, ran at me, wrapping her arms around my leg. Daddy, we made cookies. Sarah was at the stove, a little flour smudged on her cheek. She smiled at me, that easy, familiar smile that always made my shoulders drop an inch. Hey you. Rough day. The usual, I managed to say, my voice sounding hollow in my own ears. I watched her move around the kitchen, her hair tied up in a messy bun. I watched my son Ben meticulously setting the table, arguing with his sister about who got the blue cup. This was it. The calm before the storm. This perfect, fragile little world I had built, and the wrecking ball was already swinging. A wave of love so fierce and protective it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. I would do anything to keep this. Anything. Later that night, I met my older brother Leo at a dive bar downtown. He already knew the situation. I'd sent him a frantic one-line text. He slid a whiskey toward me without a word. "So the apocalypse is nigh," he said, taking a long drink of his beer. "He's going to tell her, Leo." "I know it. 6 years. She's never going to forgive me." Leo swirled the ice in his glass. He'd been through a messy divorce himself. He was my designated expert on marital implosion. "Okay. First things first. Get your story straight. What was she to you?" "Nothing." I said, maybe too quickly. "You know what it was. An outlet. It wasn't emotional." "Good. That's your mantra," he said, pointing a finger at me. "It meant nothing. You were in a bad place, you made a stupid mistake, and it was purely physical. You were weak, not evil." "Got it." I nodded, grabbing onto the words like a life raft. Weak, not evil. When she confronts you, and she will, you don't confess. You react. She'll have evidence, text, whatever. Don't try to deny the act, just deny the meaning. You cry. You tell her she's the only one you've ever loved. You tell her this other woman was a symptom of your own insecurity, a disgusting mistake that has nothing to do with her or your marriage. You beg. You grovel. You book a therapist before the conversation is even over. What if she just leaves? The words caught in my throat. Leo sighed, finishing his beer. Then she leaves. But most people don't want to blow up their lives, Henry. They want a reason to stay. You just have to give her a good one. The next few days were a special kind of hell. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd nearly jump out of my skin. I watched Sarah, looking for any sign, a flicker of coldness in her eyes, a clipped tone in her voice. But there was nothing. She was the same as always. Warm, funny, busy with the kids. We had sex, and I held on to her afterward like a man about to be cast out into the wilderness, memorizing the feel of her skin against mine. A week went by. Then 2. Silence. I texted Chloe. Asterisk. Anything asterisk. A few hours later, she replied. Asterisk, he hasn't said a word. To me or anyone. I think he's just going to let it go. Maybe he's too embarrassed. Asterisk. The relief was so profound it was physical. I felt my muscles unclench for the first time in 14 days. The wrecking ball had stopped swinging. I dodged it. Mark had his own pride to worry about. Maybe blowing up my life wasn't worth blowing up his own. Leo was right. People don't want to blow up their lives. The false security felt incredible. I started sleeping through the night again. I laughed at dinner. I felt like I'd been given a second chance, a divine pardon. I promised myself, I swore on my children's lives, that I was done. I would be the husband Sarah deserved. The 90% was now 100%. The box was sealed, buried, and forgotten. I was sitting in my car in the office parking garage, about to head home. I felt good. Light. I was scrolling through pictures of Maya's soccer game from the weekend when my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. Asterisk, Henry. I am so sorry. I didn't know. Asterisk. My stomach tightened. Sorry for what did Mark change his mind? Before I could type a reply, a second message came through. It was a picture. My brow furrowed as I tapped to open it. It was a photo taken from across a street looking into the window of a dimly lit cafe. A man and a woman were sitting at a small table, leaning in close. The woman was laughing, her head tilted back. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun. She had a tiny smudge of what looked like chocolate on her cheek. It was Sarah. My Sarah. The man across from her wasn't me. He was reaching across the table, his hand covering hers. The look on his face wasn't friendly. It was intimate. It was the way I used to look at her years ago. The world tilted. The air in the car vanished. A roaring sound filled my ears, the sound of my own blood pounding. This wasn't possible. Not Sarah. She was the 90%. She was the anchor. She was the one thing in my life that was pure and true. My hand started to shake, the phone rattling against the steering wheel. I couldn't breathe. I felt a hot acidic bile rise in my throat. This had to be a mistake. A misunderstanding. A friend from work. It had to be. Just then, my phone buzzed again. A new text, this one from Sarah. Asterisk, hey babe. Just leaving the grocery store now. Be home in 10. Want me to pick up some of that red wine you like? Asterisk. The lie. The goddamn lie. Asterisk. Just leaving the grocery store. Asterisk. My vision tunneled. The picture was a brand on my retinas. But the text was the twist of the knife. She was lying. To me. Easily, casually, without a second thought. I drove like a maniac, blasting through yellow lights. My hands shaking so badly I could barely keep them on the wheel. The 10-minute drive felt like an hour. When I burst through the door, my heart was a trip hammer in my chest. And there she was. Unloading groceries. Milk, eggs, a carton of orange juice. She was humming. Hey, you beat me, she said, smiling that same smile from before. That warm, familiar, lying smile. Traffic was a nightmare. The sheer breathtaking audacity of it stole my voice. I just stared at her, at the bag of apples on the counter, at the whole perfect fraudulent scene. Maya and Ben were in the living room, the sounds of some cartoon echoing down the hall. Henry, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I couldn't do it. Not in front of them. I swallowed the acid in my throat and knotted my body, a single rigid knot of fury. Fine. Long day. We ate dinner in a state of suspended animation. I moved my food around my plate, the roasted chicken from the other night now tasting like ash. Every time she spoke, asking the kids about school, laughing at a joke Ben made, I felt a fresh wave of nausea. How long? How long had this been going on? Was anything real? Later, after the kids were in bed, after the house fell into its usual quiet rhythm, I found her in the living room reading on the couch. The trap was set. My whole body was buzzing. I didn't say a word. I just walked over and dropped my phone onto the cushion next to her, the picture of her and him glowing on the screen. She didn't flinch. She picked it up, looked at it for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she set it down and met my eyes. Her own were calm. Too calm. Who is he, Sarah? I asked, my voice a low, shaking growl. The victim. I was the victim here. My rage felt righteous. Who the hell is he? His name is David, she said, her voice even. No tears, no panic. Just a statement of fact. The lack of drama was infuriating. I wanted her to crumble. I needed her to. David. How long? How could you do this? To me, to our family. After everything we have. The words from Leo's playbook came out automatically as script for a different, more predictable tragedy. She looked at me, a flicker of something pity maybe in her eyes. Henry, stop. Stop. You want me to stop? I was pacing, now a caged animal. You're cheating on me, Sarah. You're throwing our whole life away for some. Asterisk David asterisk. Yes, I am, she said, still perfectly composed. She stood up, crossing her arms. She didn't look guilty. She looked tired. And you've been cheating on me with Chloe. The name hit me like a physical blow. It knocked the wind out of my lungs, the rage out of my veins, replaced instantly by a freezing, bottomless dread. My mouth went dry. My carefully constructed world didn't just crack. It atomized. What the word was, a pathetic squeak. I know about Chloe, she repeated, her voice softening, which was somehow worse. I have for some time now. About 4 years, give or take. 4 years. Not a recent discovery. A long-held secret truth. While I was sneaking around building my little box for the 10% she knew. While I was panicking about Mark, she knew. While I was holding her at night, feeling relieved and sanctimonious, she knew. The entire narrative of my life was a fiction, I told myself. My legs gave out and I sank onto the arm of the chair. The room was spinning. She kept going, each word a precisely placed nail in my coffin. At first I was devastated. But then I realized. You hadn't been present in this marriage for a long time. You were here, but you weren't times here asterisk. You just needed the 90% right, the stable home life. The window dressing. My own pathetic justification. She was throwing my own bullshit back in my face. David, she said, and her voice changed. It warmed. He sees all of me. He loves all of me. Not just the convenient parts. She took a deep breath, the only sign of emotion I'd seen from her all night. I love him, Henry. And I want a divorce. There it was. The end of the world delivered, not with a bang, but with a quiet, unshakable certainty. There was no begging to be done. No groveling. Leo's advice was a joke. I had no power here. I was never the one in control. The days that followed were a blur of antiseptic logistics and profound silence. Sarah transformed. The warm, familiar woman I knew was gone, replaced by an efficient, emotionally detached stranger who shared my address. She spoke about lawyers and custody schedules with the same tone she used to use for grocery lists. She was already gone. I'd just been too arrogant to notice. I moved into the guest room. I didn't sleep. I'd lie awake all night staring at the ceiling, my heart racing, replaying that conversation over and over. A weight settled deep in my chest, a permanent crushing anxiety I couldn't shake. I'd wake up gasping for air, convinced I was having a heart attack. After a week of this, I went to a doctor who gave me a prescription for clonazepam. The little white pills were the only things that could quiet the roaring in my head, dulling the world into a manageable gray fog. I called Leo, desperate for something, sympathy, advice, anything. She knew the whole time, Leo. 4 years. She played me. She let me believe I was getting away with it while she was building a whole new life. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Played you, he finally said, his voice flat. Henry, she lived with it. For 4 years. She swallowed the betrayal every single day while you were off getting your 10%. What did you expect? Thank you card. His words were cold, hard stones. There was no comfort there. A month later, it was official. We told a few close friends through a stilted joint email about our amicable decision to separate. The next day, a mutual friend, Jessica, posted a vague supportive message on her Facebook page about how sad she was for us, how hard this must be on everyone. I couldn't help myself. I scrolled through the comments, hungry for some kind of validation. Asterisk, so sorry to hear, sending love to you both. Asterisk. Asterisk. Thinking of you. Sarah, you're one of the strongest people I know. Asterisk. Then I saw one from a woman I vaguely knew from a PTA committee. Asterisk, strong is right. Some of us knew what she was putting up with. He's getting exactly what he gave. Poetic justice, if you ask me. Asterisk. Another person replied beneath it. Asterisk. Couldn't agree more. You can't set a fire in your neighbor's house and be surprised when the embers burn yours down too. Asterisk. I dropped the phone on the bed. My face was hot with shame. They knew. Or they'd guessed. It didn't matter. They weren't seeing a heartbroken husband. They were seeing a hypocrite. A punchline. A man who was finally feeling the exact same pain he'd inflicted without a second thought for 6 years. The box I'd built wasn't just for my affair. I had put my wife in a box too. And she had simply quietly found the strength to climb out and walk away. My life on paper is perfect. I know how that sounds. But it's true. I'm a stay-at-home mom to a whip-smart 7-year-old Lily. My husband, Mark, is a cardiothoracic surgeon. Yes, a heart surgeon. Our house is beautiful, my car is new, and my biggest stress on any given Tuesday is whether to do Pilates or yoga. It's a good life. A privileged life. I'm not ashamed of it. Mark worked his ass off for it. And I work my ass off keeping our home and our daughter's world running like a well-oiled machine. My stepsister Chloe has a different life. Our moms got married when we were in high school, throwing us into a blended family mess we never asked for. We were never close. She was always prickly. Now she's a single mom to 3 kids under 10, working as a receptionist at a dental office. Her life is a constant frantic scramble. Which is why I help. A lot. At least 2 or 3 times a week I have her kids over. After school, on weekends, whenever she gets called into work or just needs a damn break. I never ask for a dime. I feed them, help with homework, drive them to the park with Lily. I do it because they're family. And honestly, because Chloe looks like she's always one minor inconvenience away from shattering into a million pieces. The annual 4th of July BBQ was at my mom and stepfather's house this year. It was hot, the air thick with the smell of chlorine from the pool and sizzling burgers on the grill. Lily was chasing Chloe's 2 boys, Mason and Noah, around the yard with a water gun, their shrieks of laughter cutting through the low hum of adult conversation. Chloe's youngest, a little girl named Maya, was asleep in her stroller under the shade of a big oak tree. Mark and I had just celebrated our 10th anniversary. He'd been on call for the actual day, so we were celebrating now with family. He pulled me aside near the patio, a mischievous grin on his face. "Close your eyes," he whispered. I rolled my eyes but played along. I felt him slide something cool and heavy onto my left wrist. Then he took my right hand and a second more delicate piece of jewelry circled my other wrist. "Okay, open." I looked down. On my left wrist was a stunning diamond tennis bracelet, each stone catching the afternoon sun and exploding with light. On my right, nestled next to my wedding set, was a platinum eternity band just as brilliant. My jaw literally dropped. "Mark, this is too much." "Nothing's too much for you," he said, kissing my temple. "Happy anniversary, babe." I threw my arms around his neck, feeling a dizzying rush of love and gratitude. Of course, I had to show someone. My mom was the first person I grabbed. She gushed appropriately, holding my hands up to the light. "Oh, Andrea. They're breathtaking. Mark, you're a keeper." Chloe was sitting at a picnic table trying to coax Maya to eat some mashed up banana. She saw us looking at the jewelry and her mouth tightened into a thin straight line. I knew that look. But I was floating on a cloud of anniversary bliss, so I walked over my good mood, refusing to be punctured. "Chloe, look what Mark got me," I said, maybe a little too enthusiastically. I held out my hands. She glanced down, her eyes lingering for just a second before flicking back to her daughter's face. "Wow," she said, her voice completely flat. "That's a lot of diamonds." "I know, isn't he insane?" I laughed, nudging Mark playfully. I told him it was way too much. "Yeah," she said, scraping the spoon around the little plastic container. "It is." The air went cold. An awkward silence fell between us. Mark, bless his conflict-avoidant heart, cleared his throat. "Well, I'm gonna go check on the grill. Make sure your stepdad doesn't turn the steaks into charcoal." He gave my shoulder a squeeze and made a quick escape. I should have left it alone. I should have walked away. But I couldn't stand the tension. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice softer. "I'm fine, Andrea," she said, not looking at me. "Just peachy." Before I could reply, my stepfather Rick lumbered over, a beer in his hand and a sheen of sweat on his forehead. He was a good guy, but with the subtlety of a runaway train. "What's all the fuss?" he boomed. His eyes immediately landed on my wrists. "Whoa. Look at that hardware. Mark's treating you right, kiddo." He clapped me on the shoulder. Then he turned his full oblivious attention to Chloe. He gestured toward my new eternity band with his beer bottle. "Hey, Chloe," he said, his voice loud enough for the whole patio to hear. "When are you getting a ring from that fella of yours?" Chloe was seeing some guy named Kevin. A roofer. It was new. It was casual. It was definitely not at the diamond ring stage. Every drop of color drained from Chloe's face. It was like he'd slapped her. She slowly put the spoon down on the table, her movement stiff and deliberate. The happy noise of the party seemed to fade into the background. All I could hear was the blood pounding in my own ears. She finally looked up, but not at Rick. Her eyes, dark and stormy, locked directly onto mine. Not everybody can afford to waste thousands of dollars on a shiny rock. "Rick," she snapped, her voice laced with pure venom. Rick froze, the dopey smile sliding off his face. He finally realized he'd stepped on a landmine. "Oh. I just meant." "It's fine," I jumped in, trying to smooth things over. My heart was racing. I put on my best gentle conciliatory voice, the one I used when Lily was on the verge of a tantrum. Chloe, I'm so sorry. We weren't trying to rub anything in your face, I promise. It's just an anniversary gift. It was the worst possible thing I could have said. My attempt at sympathy landed like a spark in a puddle of gasoline. Chloe's chair scraped against the concrete as she shot to her feet. Maya, startled by the sudden movement, started to cry. Oh, stop it, she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. Just stop. Don't you dare patronize me with your fake pity. Oh, Chloe. I'm sorry your life is a dumpster fire while mine is so perfect. She mimicked my voice in a high mocking tone. That's not what I was doing. Isn't it? She cut me off, taking a step closer. The whole yard was quiet now. Everyone was watching. My mom was hovering nearby, her face pale. Mark was frozen by the grill, tongs in hand. Chloe's eyes raked over me from my salon-perfect hair to my designer sandals lingering on the new diamonds sparkling on my wrists. A humorless, ugly smirk twisted her lips. God, don't you ever get tired of it? She asked, her voice dripping with a disgust so profound it made me flinch. Of being so useless. I stared at her, completely stunned. What did you just say to me? She leaned in, and the whole world narrowed to her furious, tear-filled eyes. You heard me, she whispered. But the words carried across the silent yard like a gunshot. Just a useless little gold digger living off your husband's money. The words hung in the humid air, thick and ugly. Useless little gold digger. For a second, I couldn't breathe. It felt like the world had tilted sideways. My husband, my mom, her husband, all frozen in a terrible tableau. The only sounds were the distant sizzle of the grill and Maya beginning to wail in her stroller. What did you say to me? I finally managed my voice, a strangled whisper. You heard me, Chloe spat, her face contorted with a rage I'd never seen up close. It was biblical. You flaunt it all, don't you? The big house, the fancy car, the fucking diamonds. You parade your perfect life around like a trophy while the rest of us are drowning. That is not true. I shot back, my own anger flaring hot and fast, burning away the shock. I help you, I watch your kids all the time. For free, she shrieked, throwing her hands up in the air. Yes, you watch them for times, free times, another little act of charity from St. Andrea to make yourself feel good. Do you have any idea what that does to my kids? To me? She took another step, invading my space, her finger jabbing the air between us. My kids come home from your palace talking about Lily's playroom, Lily's horseback riding lessons, Lily's trip to Disney World. My Maya cries because Lily gets to do ballet times and times gymnastics, and I have to tell her we can't afford it. I have to see the look on her face when she asks why Santa isn't as good to her as he is to her cousin. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To feel like a constant failure in your own children's eyes, because you can't compete with your perfect rich stepsister. Every word was a punch to the gut. All the years of resentment she kept bottled up were pouring out of her like poison. My attempts to help, my genuine efforts to ease her burden, she saw them all as a personal attack. I felt a cold fury settle over me. The desire to be nice, to de-escalate, to be the bigger person, it all evaporated. So this is my fault, I said, my voice dangerously low. My fault you can't afford ballet. My fault your life isn't what you want it to be. It's your fault for rubbing it in my face every chance you get. I wasn't rubbing anything in your face. I was yelling, now I didn't care. I was happy. My husband gave me a gift and I was happy. Is that not allowed? Am I supposed to hide my life from you? So you don't feel bad about yours? You could try having some fucking class. That was it. I was done. You're a jealous witch, Chloe. I said, the words coming out sharp and mean. I saw her flinch, but I didn't stop. I have spent years bending over backwards for you. Driving your kids around. Feeding them. Treating them like my own. And for what? So you can stand here and accuse me of being useless, of being a gold digger. All because you're miserable and want someone to blame. I took a breath, ready to deliver the final fatal blow. You want me to stop making your kids jealous? Fine. Consider my free babysitting services officially closed. From now on, you can pay for childcare like everyone else. Let's see how much money you have for ballet lessons then. The silence that followed was absolute. Chloe stared at me. Her mouth slightly opened, the rage in her eyes replaced by a flicker of pure shock, then panic. She had pushed and pushed, and I had finally pushed back with the one thing that could actually destroy her. She didn't say another word. She spun around, snatched a crying Maya from her stroller, and barked at her sons. Mason, Noah, we're leaving. Now, the boys stopped their game of tag, their happy faces instantly crumpling with confusion. But Mom, we didn't have cake yet. Mason whined. I said now. Chloe screamed. She practically dragged them across the lawn, not even bothering to gather their pool towels or shoes. She fumbled with the gate, threw it open, and stormed out to her beat-up minivan without a single look back. The slam of her car door echoed across the now silent party. My whole body was shaking. Mark was instantly at my side, his arm wrapping around my waist, holding me up. Are you okay? He murmured into my hair. I just shook my head, unable to speak. My mother rushed over her face, a mask of distress. Andrea, my God. You need to go after her. You have to apologize. I turned and stared at her, incredulous. Apologize? Did you hear what she said to me? She called me a useless gold digger. I know, honey, I know, she said, her hands fluttering nervously. But she's hurting. Her life is hard. You know she didn't mean it. Oh, she meant every single word, I said, pulling away from Mark to face her fully. And I am not apologizing. Not this time. Andrea, please, she begged, her voice dropping to a whisper. Just do it to keep the peace. For the family. To keep the peace, I laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. You mean so you and Rick don't have to feel uncomfortable? There is no peace, Mom. She just nuked it. I'm the one who is owed an apology, and I'm damn sure not going to get one. I turned and walked away, Mark following close behind. The party was over. People were gathering their things, murmuring quiet goodbyes, desperate to escape the toxic cloud that had settled over the backyard. We helped Lily pack up her things and left in near silence. The next few days were a tense quiet. My mom called twice, leaving voicemails about the importance of family and forgiveness. I deleted them both without listening all the way through. On Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. My stomach clenched. Can you watch the kids Friday night, Kevin? And I have a thing. I stared at the message, at the casual, entitled request, as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't ripped me to shreds in front of our entire family. Did she think I wasn't serious? That it was just an empty threat made in the heat of the moment? that I would just roll over and go back to being her free, convenient solution. I felt that same cold fury from the BBQ rise up in me. But this time, it was calm. Resolute. I typed out a reply, my thumb steady. No. I can't. I sent it. She replied almost instantly. Why not? I could have listed 1,000 reasons. I could have rehashed the entire fight. I could have screamed at her through the phone. Instead, I gave her the simple, unvarnished truth she'd created. You'll have to find other arrangements. I blocked her number. Then I went to Lily's room, sat on the floor, and helped her build a castle out of Legos, feeling the weight of a one-sided relationship I had carried for years finally blessedly begin to lift. For 9 years, I've been the constant. I'm the guy who taught Jay how to ride a bike without training wheels, the one who sat through every god-awful school play, the one who paid for the braces her real dad promised and then forgot. For 9 years, I've loved her like she was my own. And for 9 years, Jay has kept a loaded gun pointed at my chest, chambering the same 6 words every time her biological father Mark flaked. You're not my real dad. She used it like a get-out-of-jail-free card. I'd ask her to clean her room after Mark missed a weekend pickup. You can't tell me what to do. You're not my real dad. I'd ground her for sneaking out. I'm calling my dad. My times real times dad. My wife Sarah would just sigh and give me that look. The times please be the bigger person times look. And I always was. I'd swallow the bitterness, absorb the blow, and keep on being the reliable, boring always. Their guy who paid the bills. But 16 is different. A 16th birthday is a milestone. And Mark, true to form, had promised the moon. He was going to fly and take her to a fancy dinner and give her the keys to a brand new car, a promise so absurd I didn't even bother warning her it was a lie. Jay spent 2 months vibrating with an excitement she never showed for anything I did. She planned her outfit. She booked the restaurant. She talked about nothing else. The day of her birthday, I grilled steaks in the backyard, while Sarah arranged a ridiculous number of balloons in the living room. Jay was glued to her phone, perched on the edge of the couch, watching the front door like a hawk. He lands in an hour, she announced to no one in particular. His flight from Denver. I flipped a steak. That's great, Jay. An hour passed. Then 2. The sun started to dip below the neighbor's roof, casting long shadows across the lawn. The steaks were getting cold. Jay's manic texting had slowed to a dead stop. Her face, once bright with anticipation, was hardening into a familiar brittle mask. Sarah tried first. Honey, maybe his flight was delayed. Traffic from the airport is terrible. Jay just shook her head, her eyes locked on the dark screen of her phone. She called him a dozen times. Each one went straight to voicemail. I brought a plate inside. Jay, let's eat. Your dad will get here when he gets here. That's when the first tear slipped. It traced a path through her foundation, and she swiped it away with a vicious motion. Then came another. Soon her shoulders were shaking, the quiet sobs of someone trying desperately not to fall apart. It was a sound I knew all too well. I put the plate on the coffee table and sat on the arm of the couch, my hand hovering over her back. This was the routine. Mark disappoints, I comfort, she lashes out, we move on. I'm sorry, sweetie. I said, my voice soft. I finally rested my hand on her shoulder. She flinched like I'd burned her. She spun around, her face a mess of tears and smeared mascara, her eyes blazing with a hatred that was years in the making. It wasn't just disappointment this time. It was pure distilled rage, and it was all pointed at me. Don't touch me, she shrieked, scrambling away. Don't you dare act like you care. He was supposed to be here. He promised. I know he did, I said, holding my hands up in surrender. It's okay to be upset. It's not okay. She screamed, her voice cracking. None of this is okay. You love this, don't you? You love when he doesn't show up because then you get to play the hero. Sarah stood up. Jay, that's not fair. Owen was just trying to. Stay out of it, Jay wheeled on her mother before turning back to me, jabbing a finger in my direction. The final nuclear option. The words she saved for when she wanted to inflict maximum damage. God, you're not even my real dad anyway, she spat, the words dripping with venom. Stop trying to act like it. And then, something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud crack, but a quiet, clean break. 9 years of swallowing my pride, of taking the hits, of being the bigger person, it all just crumbled. I looked at this screaming, crying teenager who I had tucked in at night and helped with homework and held when she was sick. And I didn't see the hurt little girl anymore. I saw the weapon she was holding. And I was done being her target. I stood up, my face completely blank. I didn't say a word. I just walked past her, past Sarah's shocked face, and went upstairs to our bedroom. I closed the door, and the sound of her sobbing eventually faded. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in silent warfare. I was a ghost in my own house. I got up before anyone else went to work, came home late, and ate dinner in my home office. I was polite but empty. I'd answer Sarah's questions with one-word responses. I didn't ask Jay about her day. I didn't look at her when we passed in the hall. The warmth I had injected into the home for nearly a decade was gone, and the chill was palpable. Sarah tried to breach the wall a few times. Owen, you have to talk to her, she'd plead. She's miserable. She regrets what she said. Does she? I'd reply, not looking up from my laptop. Has she said that to me? The answer was always no. I wasn't angry anymore. The searing heat from her birthday outburst had cooled into something hard and heavy in my gut. It was resolve. I was done. Done being the emotional punching bag. Done being the reliable ATM who got treated like a stranger. If I wasn't her real dad, then I would stop acting like it. Tonight, I was on the couch watching a game, the house quiet. Sarah was at her book club. Jay was upstairs, probably on FaceTime with her friends, the birthday drama. Now just old news. For the first time in 2 weeks, the tension had eased, replaced by a cold, functional quiet. It wasn't a home, but it was survivable. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, hesitant. Jay appeared in the doorway to the living room. She was avoiding my eyes, looking at her fuzzy socks, shifting her weight from foot to foot. She was holding her phone in one hand and nervously picking at the case with the other. The silence stretched thick and uncomfortable. Finally, she took a breath. She looked up, her expression a careful mixture of nonchalance and nerves. Hey, she said, her voice small. So me and Chloe and them are going to the mall this weekend, and she trailed off, clearing her throat. She took another step into the room, her hand already sliding into her pocket. There's this really cute top at Zara. I didn't move. I didn't even turn my head. I just kept my eyes on the basketball game, watching tiny men run back and forth on the screen. The sound of her voice, so casual, so completely oblivious, was like gasoline on a pilot light I didn't know was still burning. Okay, I said, my voice flat. She shifted again. Well, I was wondering if I could get like $50 for the top and maybe some food court pretzels. 9 years. 9 years of her using those 6 words to cut me down, and here she was 2 weeks after delivering the most venomous version yet asking for cash for mall pretzels. Not an apology. Not a "hey, are we okay?" Just an open hand expecting the ATM to dispense as usual. The quiet, clean break inside me sharpened into a razor's edge. I finally turned my head slowly and looked at her. Really looked at her. There was no remorse in her eyes. No guilt. Just the mild impatience of a teenager waiting for a transaction to be completed. I set my beer down on the coaster with a deliberate click. "You know," I began, my voice dangerously calm, "that's a really good question for your dad." Jay blinked. Confusion flickered across her face. "What Marquis in Denver?" "I know," I said, leaning forward slightly. The cold resolve in my gut had found its voice. "But you should ask him. Your time's real time's dad." I let the words hang in the air between us. I watched her process them, watched the nonchalant expression crumble as she replayed what I'd said. It was like watching a dam break in slow motion. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open, and the color drained from her face. She finally understood. I wasn't playing the game anymore. I was using her rules. "Why don't you ask your real dad for money?" I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, but each word as clear and hard as a diamond, "because you constantly remind me I'm not him." The first tear was instantaneous. It was followed by a sharp, wounded gasp, as if I'd physically struck her. Her face twisted into a mask of pure shock and hurt. This wasn't the angry, theatrical crying from her birthday. This was the quiet, broken sobbing of someone who had just been gut-punched. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. She just spun around and fled up the stairs, her footsteps heavy and frantic. A moment later, I heard her bedroom door slam shut, the sound echoing through the cold, silent house. I stared at the empty doorway, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt a sick, hollow feeling in my stomach, but underneath it there was something else. A grim, terrifying sense of rightness. The line had been drawn. An hour later, Sarah came home. I heard her keys in the lock, her footsteps, then the pause, as she must have sensed the Arctic atmosphere. She found me in the exact same spot, staring at a TV that was now just broadcasting post-game analysis. "What happened?" she asked, her voice tight. "Jay's in her room, hysterical. She won't talk to me." I didn't look at her. I just took a long pull from my beer. "She asked me for money." "Okay," Sarah prompted, setting her purse down. And I told her to ask her real dad for it. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. I could feel Sarah's eyes on me, could feel the judgment radiating from her. "Oh," and she finally said, her voice strained. "You didn't." "I did," I confirmed, finally meeting her gaze. "I used her own words, Sarah. The same words she uses to stab me every single time she gets a chance." She sank onto the arm of the chair opposite me, rubbing her temples. "I know what she said was horrible. I know she has been awful to you, and God, you don't deserve any of it. But to throw it back in her face like that, she's a 16-year-old kid who was hurting. And I'm the 42-year-old man who's been her punching bag for a decade." I shot back, my voice rising. "When does it stop? When do I get to stop being the bigger person? She doesn't see me as a father. She sees me as a wallet and a chauffeur who she can abuse whenever her fantasy dad lets her down. I'm done. So this is your solution? Cruelty. It's not cruelty. It's a consequence. I stood up, pacing the small space in front of the fireplace. She finally got one. For the first time in her life, she said her magic words, and they didn't work. They blew up in her face. Maybe now she'll think twice before she pulls the trigger again. Or maybe Sarah said, her voice trembling, you've just confirmed what she's always felt. That you're not her dad. That your love is conditional. Her words hit me harder than Jay's ever had. I stopped pacing and just stared at her, a fresh wave of isolation washing over me. You still don't get it, I said quietly. You're still defending her. I walked out of the room, grabbing my jacket from the hook by the door. I needed air. I needed to be somewhere that didn't feel like enemy territory. I ended up at a bar near my office, a place with dark wood and sticky floors. I called my best friend Mike. I laid out the whole story from the birthday to the showdown on the couch, expecting some kind of validation. So you said that to her? Mike asked after I finished, a note of disbelief in his voice. Yeah. Word for word. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Dude, he finally said. You're an idiot. What? Why? Because she's a kid, Owen. A pissed off, heartbroken teenage girl. You're the adult. You don't use a nuclear weapon because a kid throws a rock at you. You just proved her right. You acted like a stepdad, not a dad. She's been throwing rocks for 9 years, Mike. I get it, it sucks. But that's the gig you signed up for. You love the mom, you take the shit from the kid until they grow up and figure it out. You don't pour salt in the wound. Man, you screwed this up. He kept talking, but I tuned him out. I hung up the phone and ordered another whiskey. Sarah thought I was cruel. Mike thought I was an idiot. Jay was probably crying in her room, feeling completely justified in her hatred of me. I was utterly alone in this. I sat there for another hour. The ice in my glass melting, the voices in my head arguing in a vicious circle. Was it cruel? Yes. The look on her face confirmed it. Was it a mistake? Probably. A real dad might have absorbed the blow and offered a hug. But as the whiskey warmed my veins, that grim sense of necessity returned. I wasn't her real dad. She had made that painfully abundantly clear. For 9 years, I had tried to be. I had done all the things a real dad does, hoping one day the title would stick. It never did. Tonight I just stopped pretending. I held up a mirror and showed her exactly what her words felt like. It was ugly and it was painful, but it was honest. It was revenge not on her, but on the lie we had all been living. I paid my tab and walked out into the cold night air. I didn't know what I was going home to. A silent wife. A stepdaughter who hated me more than ever. I had no idea how to fix this, or if it could even be fixed. But for the first time in 9 years, the rules of engagement were clear. The punching bag was officially retired. It was his rule. His idea. That's the part that really kills me. We only go together, Sarah. Mark had said a year ago, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold his coffee cup. He looked broken that day, truly broken, after blowing through our savings. That way we have a set amount, we have fun, and we leave when we say we're gonna leave. It's the only way I can control it. It sounded so reasonable. So responsible. It was the first time he'd ever suggested a boundary for himself, and my stupid, hopeful heart latched onto it like a life raft. For a year it worked. We'd go once a month, take out $200, and leave when it was gone. It felt almost normal. I started to breathe again. That Friday, the breathing stopped. The $800 for his truck loan was sitting on the kitchen counter in a crisp white envelope. I just pulled it from the ATM. He was supposed to drive it over to the credit union before they closed at 6. "Hey, I'm gonna run out and take care of this," he said, walking into the kitchen. He kissed me on the cheek, his lips dry. The kids were shrieking in the living room, deep in some epic battle between a T-Rex and a unicorn. Normal Friday stuff. "Okay, hurry back. I'm making that lasagna you like," I said, not looking up from the onions I was dicing. He grabbed the envelope. "Be back in 20. 20 minutes turned into 40. I'd finished the prep and slid the lasagna into the oven. I called his phone. It rang and then clicked to voicemail. "Hey, it's Mark." Weird. He always answers. I called again 10 minutes later. Straight to voicemail. A cold knot formed in my stomach, familiar and heavy. It was the old feeling, the one I'd thought I'd buried. Asterisk. No times I told myself. Asterisk. Don't go there. His phone probably died. He ran into a friend. Asterisk. I had a whole list of perfectly logical excuses I used to recite like a prayer. But they felt flimsy tonight, transparent. I pulled the kids away from their toys and got them to the dinner table. They were asking where Daddy was. "He'll be home soon, sweeties," I said, my voice sounding thin and high. After they were in bed, the house fell silent. 9:00 p.m. The lasagna was cold on the stove. His truck was not in the driveway. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I hated this part. Hated that I had to do it, hated that he'd made our marriage a thing that needed surveillance. I opened the Find My app. His icon, a little blue dot, with his initials, popped up on the screen. It wasn't anywhere near the credit union. It wasn't near his buddy's house. It was a bright, damning circle moving steadily east on I-84. The highway to Mohegan Sunday. My thumb hovered over the message icon. My first text was deceptively calm. Asterisk, asterisk, I see where you are. Asterisk, asterisk. The little blue text bubble popped up, a tiny beacon of hope. He'd see it. He'd realize he was caught. He'd turn around. A minute later, the word appeared beneath my message times. Read asterisk. The blue dot kept moving east. My blood started to simmer. I tried calling again. Straight to voicemail. He was declining my calls. He was actively ignoring me. I went back to our messages, my thumbs flying across the screen. Asterisk, asterisk, Mark, that was the truck payment. ALL of it. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk. Read asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk. If you don't make that payment, they will take the truck. How will you get to work? Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk. Read asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk, answer your phone. Right now. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk. Read asterisk. Nothing. Just the silent, passive-aggressive confirmation that he was receiving my pleas and choosing the casino over his family. Over me. The panic was a physical thing clawing its way up my throat. I could see it all happening again, the empty accounts, the frantic calls to bill collectors, the shame. I looked at the map again. He was taking the exit. The one with the giant glittering sign I knew by heart. He was there. He'd made his choice. Something inside me snapped. The hope, the patience, the carefully constructed facade of the supportive wife, it all just shattered. All that was left was white-hot rage. My fingers didn't even shake this time. They were steady. Cold. Asterisk asterisk, you are a damn idiot. Gambling our bill money again. You broke the one rule. You broke my trust. Asterisk asterisk. I stared at the words, my own venom surprising me. It wasn't enough. He needed to understand this wasn't just another fight we'd get over. This was the end of a chapter. I kept typing. Asterisk asterisk. Turn the car around right now. Or me and the kids will be gone when you get back. Asterisk asterisk. I hit send. The word times delivered times appeared instantly. Then a moment later, the one I was waiting for. Asterisk. Read asterisk. I held my breath, watching the screen, waiting for the 3 little dots of the typing bubble to appear. For a call. For anything. There was only silence. I switched back to the map. The little blue dot had stopped moving. It was sitting right in the middle of the Mohegan Sun North parking garage. He made his choice. Now I had to make mine. I walked down the hall and pushed open the door to my daughter's room. Lily was curled up with her stuffed bear, her breath a soft, steady rhythm in the dim glow of her nightlight. In the next room, Leo was sprawled out on his stomach, one leg hanging off his little race car bed. They were safe. They were innocent. And I would not let him drag them down with him. Not this time. My feet carried me to the hall closet. I reached up to the top shelf and pulled down 2 small rolling suitcases, one pink and one blue. I set them on the floor in the middle of the hallway. The silence in the house was absolute, broken only by the sharp, decisive sound of a zipper being pulled open. My phone buzzed on the nightstand at 3:14 a.m. A harsh vibrating sound against the unfamiliar wood. His name glowed on the screen, times mark asterisk. For a split second, my heart leaped with the stupid conditioned hope that he was sorry, that he was parked outside, that he'd made a terrible mistake. I watched it buzz, a frantic little dance of desperation. Then I rolled over, silencing the screen with my thumb and pressing my face into my cousin Jenna's lumpy guest pillow. Let it ring. The next morning, Jenna made pancakes, trying to create a pocket of normal in the chaos I dragged through her front door at midnight. Lily and Leo were mostly just excited to be having a sleepover. Their giggles a sharp contrast to the lead weight in my gut. My phone rang again around 10. His work number. I knew he'd try to act like it was a normal day. I answered but said nothing. Sarah? Are you there? His voice was strained, the forced calm of a man, trying to sound like he wasn't the bad guy. Look, I know you're pissed, but you can't just take the kids, and... I ended the call. My thumb went to my photo gallery. I found a picture I'd taken an hour earlier, Lily and Leo sitting on Jenna's couch, mouths ringed with syrup, smiling at the camera. I sent it to him without a word. The message was clear times. They're fine. They're with me. This is not about them anymore. This is about you. Asterisk. 2 minutes later, my mother called. Sarah, what on earth is going on? She asked, her voice tight with disapproval. Your father and I just got off the phone with Mark. He's a mess. He said you called him a damn idiot. I closed my eyes. Of course he called them. He always plays the victim. He stole $800 of our bill money to go to the casino, Mom. I understand you're upset. honey, but your language. And to take the children, to leave your home in the middle of the night. That's not how you solve problems in a marriage. You're punishing him. A hot spike of shame and anger shot through me. He punished himself, Mom. He broke the rule. The only rule that was keeping us afloat. You need to go home and talk to your husband, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. This is a mistake. I hung up feeling smaller. The righteous anger from the night before curdling into doubt. Was she right? Did I overreact? I was the one who left. I was the one who took the kids. In his story, I was the villain. The showdown came late that afternoon. He called from his cell phone this time. I took a deep breath and walked out onto Jenna's back porch. What do you want, Mark? I asked, my voice flat. I expected begging. I expected promises. I expected a broken man full of regret. I got a monster. What do I want? He spat, his voice dripping with a venom I hadn't heard in years. I want to know who the hell you think you are talking to me like that. A damn idiot. After everything I do for this family, my jaw went slack. Everything you do. You gambled away the truck payment. They're going to repossess it. Oh, so this is about the money. You think our marriage is about $800? He laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. This is about you and your need to control everything. You couldn't stand that I did one thing for myself. For yourself. It was his rule, not mine. The words caught in my throat, choked with disbelief. He was twisting everything, rewriting history right before my ears. It doesn't matter. You don't get to talk to me like that, and you damn sure don't get to steal my kids in the middle of the night because you're having a tantrum. A tantrum. I whispered the word, knocking the air from my lungs. Yeah, a tantrum, he snarled. So you know what? You were so desperate to leave, then leave. Stay gone until you figure your crap out. Don't call me. Don't text me. I'm done. The line went dead. He hung up on me. I stood on the porch, phone in my hand, staring at the peeling paint on Jenna's railing. The world felt tilted, unreal. He wasn't sorry. He was angry. He had taken his betrayal and fashioned it into a weapon to use against me. My hands were shaking again, but not with rage. It was something else. A cold, clear dread. On autopilot, I opened the app for our home security system. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed to see the empty living room, the quiet kitchen to ground myself. But the screen was black. Under each camera feed in small gray letters was the same message: times camera offline, asterisk, living room, kitchen, front door. All of them. He unplugged them. The moment he got off the phone with me, his first move was to cut me out. To blind me. It wasn't a mistake or a power search. It was a statement. Asterisk. This is my house. You are not welcome here. You don't get to see inside anymore. Asterisk. It was so calculated. So controlling. So final. That single deliberate act did what my mother's judgment and my own self-doubt couldn't. It erased any question of whether I'd done the right thing. The man I was married to didn't just have a gambling problem. He had a cruelty problem. He would burn our entire life to the ground just to avoid admitting he was the one holding the match. And he would stand in the ashes and tell everyone I was the one who started the fire. I looked through the sliding glass door. Leo was building a tower of blocks on the floor, and Lily was showing Jenna a drawing she'd made. They were safe. They were happy. They were away from him. The ultimatum I'd given him wasn't a threat anymore. It was a promise to my children. I finally understood that saving my marriage was impossible. My only job now was to save my family from it.